like to welcome all those in attendance in person and also watching online. We will take comfort breaks as necessary. I am hoping to finish before lunch, however, that may depend on you. The clerk will confirm any apologies and take a roll call of those online.
Thank you, Provost. Good morning, everyone. We have apologies from Councillor Frank Smith. In terms of those members who are joining online, I believe we have Councillor Anderson.
Here.
And Councillor Chan.
Present.
And Councillor Freshwater.
Present.
I think it's Councillor Peter Barrett online. Oh, I think we're just trying to get Councillor Barrett online. I'm not aware of any other members that are online, and all other members are in the chambers, Provost.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henry. Members, item 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest in respect of items on today's business? I am not seeing any interest to declare. Item A1 is request for deputations. Are we happy to hear the deputations in relation to item 6 on today's agenda? Agreed, thank you. Members, item A2 is the right to roam Scottish Country Access Code. This was a request from Councillor Willie Robertson for an urgent motion around the access code revisions. I have not accepted this onto today's agenda because there has not been a material change in my opinion since the deadline for motions closed. However, in agreement with political groups across the council, there will be a joint letter sent to Nature Scot on this matter instead, which will achieve the same purpose but without the urgent item on today's business. Members, item A3 is an urgent business item from the Leader and Deputy Leader of the Council. I have accepted this item because the event in question took place after the deadline for motions closed. The Leader and the Deputy Leader will speak to this item shortly. However, I would just like to start by obviously saying this is a significant and tragic event that has ongoing consequences. There will obviously be no questions on this item as there is a live investigation ongoing, and I would ask members just to consider that when they are speaking on this item. I would now invite the Leader of the Council to move the urgent item.
Thanks, Provost. As Leader of Perth Kinross Council, I'd like to offer our sincerest condolences to the family, loved ones and friends of our resident who lost their life in this tragic event. I'd like to give praise and express our gratitude to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service and Police Scotland for their bravery and selflessness in their responses to a critical situation. The time, effort and dedication given by officers of all areas of this council and their desire to help can also never be underestimated. There are many others, charities, businesses and individuals whose kindness, support and willingness to help in this situation have shown the strength of the Perth and Kinross community as a whole. I will leave our Deputy Leader, Eric Drysdale, to expand on this point, as he was the administration lead and local member who has taken on an important role in communications on this event on our behalf. This motion is quite straightforward and asks Council to agree to instruct officers to bring forward a proposal for consideration by the Finance and Resources Committee next week with a view to enhancing the level of support, either financial or otherwise, available to those most impacted. Accepting this motion gives officers a little more time to work out where financial support and help is required most. I hope we can all agree with this approach, as we as a council can stand with our residents and businesses affected and alongside all those others who have already contributed. I move this emergency motion.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Mr. Deputy Leader to second.
Thank you, Provost. It goes without saying that I shall be wholeheartedly seconding the Leader of the Council's emergency motion today, and in so doing also add my deep gratitude for the inspirational public service I have been privileged to witness at close hand these last 4 days since the terrible fire in the early hours of Saturday morning. First and foremost, I shall repeat what I've already said publicly a number of times, that our emergency services responded magnificently in the community's hour of need, and we are deeply indebted to them all, and in particular on this occasion, our brave firefighters who converged on Scott Street from Perth Fire Station and across the wider region. On arrival, without hesitating, our brave firefighters proceeded towards what had already become an inferno and were able to rescue many residents from upper floor windows after the internal stairwell had already been destroyed by the fire, leaving no other means of escape. Yesterday, along with the First Minister and ward colleagues, Councillor Peter Barrett and Bailey Ahern, I was briefed in more detail about the events of Saturday morning. And it is very clear that both the rapid response and the evacuation tactics deployed did save many lives. This incident could have ended up so much worse than it did, and I'm sure we are all truly grateful for the professionalism and courage of these first responders. So I would like to, on behalf of this council, I trust, pass on these thanks through Craig Wallace, the local SFRS commander, and Greg Burns, the local police commander, who are in attendance online, I believe, at this moment in time. Thank you, and please pass that on to your staff. Of course, one gentleman did nevertheless lose his life. A young girl sustained serious injuries, but is thankfully now on the road to recovery, I understand, and 2 firefighters were injured. My thoughts and prayers are with those individuals and their families above all. Then there are the families, couples and sole tenants who lived at number 41 Scott Street. One minute, most if not all of them were fast asleep in bed. The next, they awoke in terror with flames and smoke in the stairway and entering their homes. Some in lower floors planned their escape by lowering bed sheets out of windows, while others stood at windows shouting to be rescued. All wearing nothing but their night clothes and all set to leave their homes and all their worldly possessions behind. As firefighters continued to tackle the blaze, residents of neighbouring and opposite properties were also evacuated into the street, and before long they were all guided to a hastily set up temporary rest centre at the Salutation Hotel, where they were looked after tremendously well. Grateful thanks are obviously offered to the Sally for stepping up without hesitation. The shock of Saturday turned into the cold light of Sunday, which dawned with the realisation that many families had lost absolutely everything they owned. From the early hours of Saturday throughout the weekend, Council and Health and Social Care Partnership staff worked tirelessly to provide visible and immediate personal support to those displaced from their homes. The small group, I have to say, of on-duty housing and social work staff worked relentlessly to reassure and provide assistance, and they were supported by a large response from Red Cross colleagues trained in disaster recovery. My deepest admiration and respect goes to those absolute stars, some of whom had the unenviable task of sitting down separately with each family from 41 on Sunday afternoon to tell them that their homes had either been destroyed or it was impossibly dangerous to even allow them to return to collect treasured possessions. Thank you to everyone involved. You are a credit to your professions and to Perth Kinross Council. I haven't mentioned businesses yet. On Monday alone, around 70 businesses sought help and received advice and support from our dedicated team. And it is clear that just as for residents, the impact on businesses already seriously challenged by the cost of living crisis and changing shopping patterns is already severe. And with the need to now demolish that whole block, which has been deemed unsalvageable, their pain will continue for some almost until Christmas. Even those business premises out with the cordon will be impacted significantly, with a drop-off in passing trade and much lower footfall. The impact on jobs and cash flow may be very serious indeed, and could easily jeopardise the continued existence of some well-loved and long-standing businesses. Then, of course, the major impact has already and will continue to ripple out into our communities. Travel delays, public transport difficulties and so on will be inconvenient and challenging for all of us, I'm sure. And this brings me to another key message I wanted to impart this morning. I am not Perth born and bred, but I have lived here for over 30 years, and I can say without hesitation that I've never seen such community spirit, such a coming together and an outpouring of generosity as I've seen with my own eyes and learned from others. From the brand new pram donated to the parents of one young baby, to the hundreds of donations of essentials and the offering of flats for the council to allocate to those made homeless, and very many other offers from retailers and leisure outlets. I have been hugely impressed and delighted to see the community respond in this way. Thank you to everyone, both for their generosity and for the almost universal supportive comments on the council Facebook pages about the council's response to this tragedy. Finally, there are just a few others I do want to thank. Our community support and enforcement team working with Police Scotland to keep us safe and keep the city moving. Our trading standards and legal teams who facilitated the very quick appointment of Reigart demolition contractors, the same firm that worked on the Glasgow School of Art, so that we can get recovery underway immediately. A name you won't know, Colin Campbell, the intrepid structural engineer from Edinburgh, who somehow managed to get on site on Saturday morning quicker than I did coming down from the Western Edge, and who went up onto SFRS's dedicated height appliance to assess the still smouldering wreckage from above. Our own media team, who are rightfully receiving very many plaudits for their exemplary informative communications. Fraser Crofts, the incident management team lead at the weekend. Lucky white heather, Fraser. Thomas Glenn, chief executive, and especially this lady here, Claire Mailer, who expertly marshalled the council response on the ground. There will be others who I have omitted to mention, and I'm sorry about that, but you know who you are. And again, I thank you for your service. One final thing before I shut up and give others a chance, Provost. This morning I've spoken with the Cabinet Secretary for Finance, and there is ongoing positive dialogue about support through the Belwyn scheme for this disaster recovery. This will continue in the coming days, and the Chief Financial Officer, Scott Walker, and I will work closely together in that respect. Provost, I'm proud to second this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Leader, and I think we would all echo all of your comments. I'd now like to invite Councillor McEwen to speak.
Thank you, Provost. The fire at 41 Scott Street resulted in the tragic loss of life, and I offer, like others, my utmost sympathy and thoughts and prayers to the deceased family and friends. Fire takes everything from you, not just your possessions for everyday life, but long-held items full of memories and family, things that you can never get back. The mental trauma and anguish should not be underestimated, and this will require support and care. And in brief conversations I've had recently and in the past with people affected by fire, is that these concerns and worries never ever leave you. The response in the night, as Councillor Drysdale has very eloquently pointed out, was amazing. The emergency services, council staff, local residents, businesses immediately responded with every effort that they could without thought, without ask. The Salutation Hotel, housing social work staff, Red Cross, and many more helped our emergency services. They did all they could to contain and safely control a major fire. We now face demolition of an unsafe listed building and a four-month evacuation cordon, so this could be done safely. This will probably take around 50 properties to rehome all those affected by this, and it will take a mixture of family and friends, private landlords and the council to provide this short-term emergency accommodation to those affected, and obviously for those who were resident in the building that's to be demolished will need permanent accommodation and solutions. This is not a small task by any means, and will take a huge effort from all those involved, and calls have gone out to any private landlords in Perth and Kinross, and I've had a couple of emails about this, who have availability to make that available to the council so that coordination and options can be given to those affected. As housing convener, I will support every effort from the housing and others to support those affected now and in the future. In discussions with the senior officers that I've had, it's evident there's a huge amount of complex support is required for the residents. It seems to be a moving target, that every day there seems to be another issue, another problem, another set of family who come to us for support. And if there are those out there who haven't yet come forward to us for support and wish to have that support, then our door is open for them now and in the future. We will do all we can as a council to support those affected, and I support today's motion to bring more detail of this to F&R committee next week, so the council can act and support our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Bailey Ahern next, please.
Thank you very much, Provost. I'm not going to go over everything that was said. I think the Deputy Leader's comments there gave us a really precise description of what has happened, and it's not right just to repeat all that and waste time, but I think it is very important that as the Conservative group, our condolences go out to the family of the person who lost their life and to the family of the young girl that was injured during the fire. This tragic event just goes to show how fire can devastate lives, buildings, and everybody around it, not just those that are immediately affected. There's going to be significant impact for all those families that have been displaced, and some are never going to go back and get their goods that were in their homes, and their properties have gone forever. There's going to be disruption for everyone in Perth and Kinross if they're coming into the city. But I think we are a resilient community, and we know why that's there, and we just have to put up with it. Think about the families and the people that were involved over the weekend. I would like to pass my thanks on to Claire Mailer for the sterling work that she's done in leading the teams in the council, and for the keeping us constantly briefed, even to the point of getting emails and letters and things at 10:30 and 11 o'clock at night. Also, would like to pass on my thanks to Craig Wallace and to Greg Burns and their teams. And I did have a discussion with one of the fire people on site, and they learned from Grenfell procedures to put in place to make sure that they knew who had come out of the building, to work with the local authority. And those procedures were put in place on early Saturday morning to make sure that they knew very quickly that everybody had been rescued from that building. And I think that's a well-learned lesson, and I think there will be other lessons learned from this as well. So just to say on behalf of the Conservative group that our thanks to everyone involved, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Bailey Ahern. Councillor Liz Barrett.
Thank you, Provost. In very strongly supporting this motion on behalf of the Scottish Liberal Democrats group, I'd first send our condolences to the family and friends of the man who lost his life, and our sympathy to everyone who's been affected, and especially the families of those who were injured. I endorse everything that's been said before, and I don't want to repeat everything. We know that people left their homes with just the clothes they had on, and many now have no home and no possessions to return to, and I just cannot begin to imagine what that feels like. I join in paying particular tribute to the Blue Light Emergency Services for the response, and that we know that the valour of the fire and rescue team in pitching their ladders against unstable building facades, risking and suffering injury to rescue people, has saved many lives, supported by the actions of the police and ambulance services. And our appreciation and admiration can't be understated, although I know I'm repeating what others have said. Also, the response by a whole range of council services led by Claire and Fraser in housing and children and adult social work to provide comfort and sympathy, a shoulder to cry on, arrange temporary accommodation, and now hopefully moving towards more permanent arrangements, respite, baby food, clothing and equipment with kindness and sensitivity, and the teams who mobilised on the practical side about council tax, finding out who was registered at the affected properties, and the economic development staff supporting businesses through the demolition and future recovery. We know this is going to go on for months, and I know that Peter stressed this point to the Scottish Government in the meeting with John Swinney yesterday, and we do look forward to more support from the Scottish Government going forward. Also, the constant support from the communications team, which was really useful and reassuring to all elected members to know what was going on. And lastly, I want to pay tribute to the people and the businesses of Perth who stepped up with generosity and kindness, calling out especially Lethem Climate Change for the clothing and emergency starter packs, the Salutation, the volunteers accepting and sorting the donations, and the Red Cross. Their actions, together with those of the Council and the emergency services, demonstrate the very best of our community doing their best when it's most needed. And on behalf of the Lib Dem group, I'd like to thank them all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Liz Barrett. I am now going to, I don't have any further comments from, oh, sorry, Councillor McCall, do apologise. I missed you there.
Thank you, Provost. Excuse me. Firstly, I would like to extend my condolences to the family and friends of the gentleman who tragically lost his life during the major fire last week. I also wish to extend my thanks to the emergency services and our own officers, the incident response team, and our health and social care partnership and the Red Cross, and the fantastic support offered by the wider community. Whilst the immediate response, Provost quite rightly, is to ensure public safety and secure accommodation for those directly affected, fantastic effort, by the way, from our colleagues in housing led by the indomitable Elaine Ritchie, we cannot lose sight of the reality that such a major incident has and will continue to have a trauma and mental health impact to everyone involved to some extent or another. I share Councillor Drysdale's admiration for our health and social care partnership officers and for the Red Cross in their immediate and ongoing response. It's work that often goes under the radar and doesn't attract headlines, but is crucial and very personal to each individual and their personal circumstances and experience. I would request, therefore, that our finance officers in both Perth and Kinross Council and in the Health and Social Care Partnership and the Finance and Resources Committee put in place financial provision to enable our Health and Social Care Partnership to have the capacity and resource to respond both in a timely manner and for the longer term for the provision of mental health and trauma-informed practitioners, like I said, in the longer term as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCall. Given the nature of the topic, we did invite Group Commander Craig Wallace from Scottish Fire and Rescue Service and Chief Inspector Greg Burns from Police Scotland to join us so that they could hear the thanks being offered today to their teams. And obviously we also have Claire and the wider council teams represented here. On that note, I would like to invite the Chief Executive to say a few words given the circumstances.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you to members for their acknowledgement of all of the efforts of your team across the council and our partners in Scottish Fire and Rescue and Police and from the wider community. I would just like to say that I think the response to this event from council services is a reflection in the work that we have done as a leadership team to look at how we share responsibilities right across this organisation. People have very rightly recognised Claire's leadership. They've very rightly recognised Fraser's leadership, who was due to be off this weekend, but who stood in for one of his colleagues. He'll not make that mistake again, I'm sure. But right across the leadership team and the teams that they support, whether it's Elaine and her housing and community colleagues, or colleagues in community support and enforcement, people at Hunter Hope, Stuart Skeen, who are well known when we have incidents of this nature. But there are people that sit behind that, Serge and his building standards colleagues, looking at what the longer term impact will be. Jackie, Jane, Zoe and others in health and social care have been rightly recognised, as should Aaron and the children family social work for the work that they've done. Greg Boland and Lisa has been talked about in her team within comms. But a particular mention, I think, also goes to Sue Terrace, who is our local resilience lead and who has done an incredible job on this event and other previous events. And then many others that sit behind that, Alan and the team in Revs and Benz, Lisa and having to procure things, Scott and making sure that we've got money to do things. This is a whole council response, and we have worked as a leadership team to put in place a leadership structure that allows us to have confidence that no matter what the event is, whoever is leading across that team is on point, but they have a full support of people sitting behind them. So thanks to the full team and for all their responses over the last few days, but also for the work that they'll do over the coming months to continue to respond and support the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Executive. I'm just going to allow Craig Wallace, Group Commander Craig Wallace from Scottish Fire and Rescue to say anything if he wishes, and then I'll invite Greg Burns, Chief Inspector Greg Burns, to come in.
Thank you, Provost. So on behalf of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, I would like to thank Perth Kinross Council for the kind words of appreciation. It was a very challenging incident for the fire service and for partner agencies, and our thoughts remain with all those that have been affected by this fire. The Scottish Fire and Rescue Service is fully committed to supporting local residents and the business community as required throughout the recovery phase, which is now underway. Thank you.
Thank you, Group Commander Wallace, and please do pass on all of our thanks to your teams who do an incredibly difficult job and probably the most dangerous peacetime role that exists. So thank you very much. Chief Inspector Craig Burns from Police Scotland.
Yeah, firstly, thank you, Provost, on behalf of Police Scotland. Thank you for your kind words of recognition. Very much appreciated, which we passed on. As Craig's obviously said, it's a very challenging situation with tragic loss of life and injury. However, I would echo the sentiments that have been said this morning. Without the timely, I suppose, professional intervention of our fire colleagues, it could have been so much worse. It goes to say we'll obviously continue to work with partners to return Perth to some form of normality. And again, thank you for your kind words.
Thank you very much, Chief Inspector. And again, very quick thinking by your officers did help reduce the severity of the impact. So thank you again for all of your team's work over the weekend. Leader of the Council, do you wish to say anything in the summation?
No, I think it's been said.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leader. On behalf of the Council then, I would like to acknowledge that this is very much a representation of, as others have said, the best of Perth and Kinross. We are a very close-knit community, and many of us know people who were in that building, or indeed who have now been affected in the wider area. It is very heartening to have seen the response in such a tragic situation, and it has obviously had huge impact, not just on the individuals affected and the family and friends of the gentleman who sadly passed away, but actually on the wider community, and it has been very heartening to see the response that has come out of that, and I hope that this morning's motion has reflected that to the wider community. Members, I take it that we can agree the urgent item. Thank you. Members, item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting of the 7th of May 2025. Are members happy to approve the minutes of the meeting of the 7th of May? Agreed. Thank you. Members, item 4 is the outstanding business statement. Before I ask for any questions on the outstanding business statement, Councillor Willie Robertson wished to comment on item A2. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Provost, for letting me speak on this. I was just going to thank you for your efforts in resolving the issue with my and Councillor Duff's motion and getting it some action put on it. But I had one question, in as much as I'm aware that in August 2022, Councillor Ian James put a similar motion to this council asking for a review of the access code. And I was wondering, I could find no reference to what the outcome of that was. And I'd appreciate if somebody could tell me that. Thank you.
Mr. Hendry is confirming that they can clarify the outcome and respond to you, and indeed all councillors will be copied in on that, so we can confirm that.
I'm grateful, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, are there any questions on the outstanding business statement? If there are no questions, can we note the outstanding business statement? So thank you. Members, item 5 is in relation to petition PET 2401, which was urged Perth and Kinross Council to build an ambitious PH2O facility. We are asking that members note the agenda note, which confirms that this motion was heard, and that the response to the petition will be determined as part of the consideration of the report in item 6. So Council is asked to note that. Item 6 is the Perth City Integrated Investment and Leisure Assets Review update. We agreed earlier on to hear deputations, and the first of those deputations is Mr. David Munro, who will make a deputation on behalf of Perth and Kinross Community Sports Network. He will have a maximum of 5 minutes. We will then hear from Mr. Bobby Bryan, and then we will hear from Mr. Willie Wilson on behalf of Perth Civic Trust. We will take questions after all 3 deputations have spoken, and I will ask councillors to indicate which of the deputies that they are wishing to address their question towards. Mr. Munro, if you'd like to come over here to the podium, please. Just before you start, Mr. Munro, Bailey Ahern, you have a point of clarification.
Yes, right. I'm happy to wait until after the deputation.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Mr. Munro, you have 5 minutes. The Deputy Provost will give you an indication at one minute. Okay.
Is now, yeah. I'd also like to bring Alistair, an architect, at one point to finish off my presentation. Okay. Good morning. You will all have received a number of documents in preparation for today's crucial council meeting. We represent 14 local sports group, which is a unique situation where we are working cooperatively to find the best way forward to meet their sporting facility needs, having been displaced and not satisfactorily rehomed as claimed by council. Over recent months, we have made a number of submissions to council officers and councils, with 10 governing bodies of sport supporting our campaign for Bell's reinstatement to benefit local sport. A summary of our vision, which you should have received, is to bring back Bell's as a fully functioning multi-court facility for sports, exhibitions and events. We should be meeting today to celebrate success in the form of welcoming a new vision for a vibrant future for local sport. Instead, we have witnessed civic vandalism, which has created a volcano of venom against council plans, which only offer a dilution of what we already have. The council 3G option for Bells, as shown in our diagrams, we were disappointed that there was no business plan for the 3G plan available yet. You can see from our diagrams that the rectangular areas in the circular floor space conflicts and doesn't fit well, being only really suitable for one 7-a-side pitch or 2 Fun 4 pitches, or 1 Fun 4 pitch in the coaching hall. We should mention flood risk here, and with the Kaya report submitted and John Cassell's, the previous manager of Bell's, data, along with John Swinney's confirmation at a recent meeting that Perth is already protected from North Muirton to Marshall Place from Tay flooding, and Scottish Water's future drainage scheme will further assist this process. A series of overlays with Thimble Row shows that Dewars or the leisure pool footprint would fit in this space, but not both. The Bell's footprint is very similar to the one of Thimble Row, and you can see the 6th badminton court offered at PH20 dwarfed by the sheer volume of space in Bell's Dome, which offers a unique, flexible use of its space. An alternative strategy. The coaching hall is lying there vacant. It's in pristine condition and just requires a floor covering to bring it back into use. A new Taraflex floor worth £88,000 has been offered by both Scottish Volleyball and Scottish Basketball. The LAL office next to the coaching hall could be brought into use as a reception area. A corridor could then follow to the back fire doors of the coaching hall and thus bring it into use. Reopening this facility would generate income and allow a proper assessment of what can be done to the listed dome with business plan comparisons along with comparative costings. I'll hand over to Alistair to talk about his vision.
Thank you, Dave. You'll see from the paperwork that has been circulated the big idea of replacing the skirt around the building, bringing the dome back to a multi-use indoor facility would be a kind of landmark building for down in that area. We have the opportunity to enhance the energy efficiency, the running costs, etc. of the building, improve the biodiversity and the rainwater provision down in that area. There will naturally be a lot of work under the ground required to be done to help with the drainage along with the Scottish Water strategy, but it does allow the building to be reinstated as an indoor space for a variety of different disciplines, which really ties in with the legacy of the original EK Bell design and desire to provide an indoor facility for the residents in Perth. Back to Dave to summarise.
Yeah, our vision is basically to see Bells reinstated. Okay, the future is bright Our vision is the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Munro. Mr. Bobby Bryan is next to make a deputation.
Take it that's on already. Yes.
If you actually want to just switch it off and switch it back on again.
Good start. Councillors, Perth has long been recognised as providing attractive sporting facilities in the in the heart of Scotland. The hospitality industry, from pubs to hotels, has benefited, as have all of the rest of the community. We acknowledge that the Council's Thimble Row proposal includes existing facilities but excludes provision for an ice rink given the small nature of the site. The economic impact of PH2O in Thimble Row on city centre retail offering is likely to be limited. Subsequently, the loss of parking facilities will be frustrating and detrimental to accessing the city centre, local retail outlets and users of the PH2O facilities. There will be a real terms reduction in the number of spaces available, even after the Council executes its option to purchase Canal Street multi-storey car park. Good health is essential for us all. A range of sporting facilities will help us to keep fit and well. The leisure pool, which was an important omission from previous proposals, looks ambitious and is welcome. However, lack of dry sport activities is unfortunate and is a significant loss of facilities in comparison to those previously available at Bells. Again, it is difficult to imagine how the Thimble Row site could offer more due to its limited size. The location is inadequate and short-sighted. Building PH2O at Thimble Row will eliminate the possibility of expansion as Perth's population increases, and over 5,000 homes are built in Perth over the next decade. The proposed construction cost of 74 million must be a concern to almost all constituents and councillors. Capital costs will create an annual cost to the council of around £3.7 million for decades to come. The existing Perth Leisure Pool and the Dewars building are relatively young in comparison to many other buildings in Perth. The buildings are structurally sound and, like all buildings, are required to be maintained on an ongoing basis. They have years of life left in them. In contrast, efficient and reliable plant is critical to the daily operation of both pools and ice rinks. Plant must regularly be serviced and periodically replaced. It is a lack of capital investment in the operating systems of these buildings which cause temporary closures, not the building fabric itself. Both facilities have seen little in the way of refurbishment or refit since their initial construction almost 40 years ago. It appears that the council has not adequately considered retaining and upgrading the existing buildings. The mission therefore needs rectifying. Live Active Leisure correctly suggests that an 8-lane training pool is now required together with a small training pool to encourage young people to learn and enjoy swimming. The recently proposed introduction of an improved leisure water is recognition of the importance to many users of the current leisure pool, without which a significant reduction in users would occur. The existing Glover Street site and facilities should be the foundation of an upgraded PH2O facility. By retaining Dewars with its popular new large gym and ice rink for curling and ice skating, there's an exciting opportunity to insert or add a new building to the Glover Street site. An 8-lane training pool, the smaller training pool, and a leisure water, a reception and changing rooms could all be accommodated. The existing pool building could be retained and or adapted, and the Glover Street site allows for adaptability in the future. Based on national building rates for swimming pools provided by a national quantity surveyor, the cost of the new building, upgrading of Dewars to include improved insulation, upgrades to building systems, and conversion of any of the other buildings, comes to a total estimated cost of circa 52 million. This is a significant reduction of around 22 million, almost 30% less than the cost of the council's Thimble Row proposal. The Glover Street site has the one thing that Thimble Row does not: space and adaptability. Subject to the council's support for this proposal, we believe consent for The Glover Street site has sufficient area to accommodate the Capability Scotland proposed building and the PH2O building as above. To combine the facilities on the single site would be evidence of the Council's recognition of the importance of an improved healthy lifestyle for all. Subject to the Council's support for this proposal, planning consent for proposed sports facility could be achieved in 2026. No change of use is required, and only an infill of an existing gap site would be required. The Glover Street proposal offers a larger, more ambitious sports centre with more amenities, will be cheaper and is available considerably sooner than the Thimble Row option. To review this proposal in further detail, the Council is requested to provide £75,000 for an independent feasibility study for the proposals above.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. I'll now invite Mr. Willie Wilson to speak on behalf of Perth Civic Trust. Switch that off, thank you. Mr. Wilson, you also have 5 minutes, and the Deputy Provost will let you know at the 1 minute to go mark.
That? Forgotten how to do that. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. First, I want to pay tribute to the contributions that Councillor Andy Chan and Ian McPherson make to the Perth Civic Trust meetings and activities. We enjoy their company and we enjoy their input. Perth Civic Trust are opposed to the current proposals and support the following. Retaining Glover Street as the locus for leisure swimming. It includes lane swimming and associated facilities, with the opportunity to introduce a joint leisure pool ice facility on site, with a joint energy centre, joint reception, cafe, and other appropriately shared facilities, as has been outlined by Bobby Bryan. We also want to support the ambition in a rejuvenated Bell Sports Centre for indoor heated sports facilities, as outlined by David Munro and his colleague. We reject the Thimble Row proposal for the following reasons. The building proposed is out of character and out of scale with the surrounding residential and business properties due to its size, scale and massing, particularly relating to the City Mills, Hotel and the Old High Street. The lack of public transport to that location. A major reduction in parking without any compensatory provision. The opportunity lost for building social housing on that site, which could include a fair degree of parking. We consider it's the wrong thing in the wrong place. The current proposals generally lack a strategic and integrated approach. Council reports have been dealing in a piecemeal way with leisure facilities over the last 2 years. And this continues today with hardly a mention of Dewars Rinks building in the considerations, except that that's been introduced by speakers already. The report does not reference links to the following. Proposals for the Mill Quarter, which the Council recently promoted as a new idea. How does that fit in with building a swimming pool right next door? The Council policy on climate change and green energy, perfectly laudable, is hardly mentioned in the paper at all, and it should be in the forefront of our minds, especially nowadays. The Council plans and strategy for communications, public transport, walking and cycling. Glover Street is ideally situated for location to a new bus rail interchange, possibly with a direct link. The current location at Thimble Row fails in all of these counts. The whole planning process of leisure facilities has been developed without any meaningful public consultation. An example was the latest questionnaire regarding Bell Sports Centre, which was a one question thing, with a virtually one question answer. 2 buildings instead of 3. The council have an ambition, correctly so, to make sure they can minimise the footprint of their estate. So why have a proposal that will have 3 buildings along with all the associated, thank you, associated costs? The proposals that are before you today are unlikely to attract external funding due to the unimaginative nature of what is proposed. As far as capability is concerned, we can all support their ambitions. It would be possible to fit the revised plans for Glover Street into the site with capability, or other options remain in Almond Valley, Scone and Bridgeverne. As a very new councillor in 1980, I enjoyed the thrill of having the new leisure pool. We took great pride in that. Colleagues, councillors, I think this afternoon, this morning, you've got the opportunity to build something that will have ambition and take a pride in the future, that will be your heritage. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I have questions for the deputies. So if I could ask all the deputies to come back up, please, and we will ask you to come to the microphone if a councillor has a question for you. Thank you. The first question is from Bailey, and it's a question for Mr. Munro.
Didn't Councillor Ahern have a point of clarification?
Yes, sorry. Is it for now, Bailey Ahern, or is it for later on?
Off. Yeah, I did have a point of clarity, but I'll do that when we start talking about the paper. I did have a question in as well.
Why don't you go with your question for the moment?
Thank you very much. Mine's for Alistair, the architect. Bell's has always been a heated building, and as I'm aware, the dome is designed to be over a heated environment. Do you think the dome will remain structurally sound? And if the building's unheated, will there be any detrimental effect on the laminate glue and the structure of the dome?
Thank you very much. I think there's a lot still to be tested and explored in that. There is a risk. It was designed to be internal and completely enclosed and never exposed to the environment when it was built originally. We don't know yet how the structure will behave, and it hasn't been explored. But yes, in answer to your question, there is a risk that something that's been designed to be internal and completely covered could deteriorate over time if it was left exposed.
Okay, thank you. Bailey, your question now from Mr. Munro.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you all the deputies for what you've contributed today. My question's for you, Mr. Munro. You mentioned that there were 10 governing or national bodies who were supportive of the proposal. Have any of those indicated whether they would be able to financially help to underwrite either the capital cost or the ongoing running cost of such a facility if it was built to their requirements? Thank you.
There's been no indication of any financial contribution, but Table Tennis Scotland would possibly relocate an office in Bell Sports Centre because of its proximity to Scotland, where 90% of the Scottish population can reach Perth within 90 minutes. Other governing bodies of sport have been asked, and they are favourable to having local development officers use Bell Sports Centre as a base on a shared basis. That's all the information I can provide at the moment, but obviously the potential is there for more governing bodies to access facilities in Bells to further their aims of local sport development.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Braun next, please, and it's a question for Mr. Wilson.
Yes, thank you, Provost. I'm afraid I've had a technology failure here this morning, so I'll have to do it this way. Mr. Wilson, Civic Trust, you mentioned about parking. the lack of parking if the Moreau is used. Will that have an effect on local businesses for access from people visiting Perth?
We're quite certain it will. The parking there is used extensively for both long-term and short-term parking, that many of the local shops rely on the availability of that. The one or two cafes that are immediately in the area, St Paul's Kirk and the cafes in the Old High Street. So there is clear evidence already that taking away all of the car parking, there isn't room for the size of the building that's envisaged and parking. That's going to have a major issue, because if you come to the swimming with Maw Paw and the Wains, the kids are half dry when they're out, and it's a winter's day, trekking down to Canole Street or Scott Street or wherever else you can get parked is an unattractive proposition. Whereas at Glover Street, ample car parking be provided. It's there already in part under the Jewers building, but can easily be accommodated in the revised proposals that we've heard today, and will be available, readily available. The other issue about Canole Street car park is that some of the prospective and likely occupants of the building, if the council go ahead to purchase it, will have an intensive use of the car park, because they need the agricultural and veterinary officers who I understand are to relocate there, possibly the police, will have an intensive use of cars for their work. That's what they need. So car parking is a major issue. Some statistics have been done, but I think the analysis has not been made to substitute the car parking that's there. And whether we all want to get on the bus and travel and walk and cycle, but that's not practical for many people who live out with the city. So I think it's a real issue.
Thank you. Mr. Leader, you have a question, and it's for the architect from...
I'm sorry, I didn't catch. I apologise, I didn't catch your name. So I look back at the original build of Bells, and the Blue Lamb supports were external. The ends of them, the bottom 3 or 4 meters. So it wasn't always designed to be indoors and heated. Is that correct? Thank you. Another question is, I was just wondering if you know how many times Bells has flooded in the last 10 years.
In the last 10 years, I believe the only flood has been 2023.
I'll get officers or others to correct me, but the answer is it's flooded 5 times in the last 7 or 8 years, because it floods from underneath. Only 2023.
Okay, this is questions, so you can.
Well, I want to correct the question about flooding. So it's if the architect cannot answer my question on flooding correctly, I have to have the chance to correct it.
I think that's fine. It is. We will get into that, I'm sure, shortly. If any of the deputies don't have the information, if you can just say that you're not aware of the detailed situation, that is helpful.
If it's possible, if I could let Dave step in, who has the information.
Okay, if he has the information, that's fine.
Thank you. We've been in close contact with John Cassels, the previous manager of Bells, and he has assured us that apart from the floods in 93 and 2023, that any internal flooding was minimal and did not cause the sports centre to close at any time, because it was dealt with by Bells staff. Okay, and that's information at all the time of his tenure as manager of Bells. Bells never closed because of damage caused by internal flooding.
Okay. Yes.
Well, I will speak to the current manager of Lived Leisure and ask him for the facts as he sees it, because I disagree with what's been said there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I think we do have Mr. Cromwell on the call, so you'll be able to get. In fact, sorry, he's here in person. I was told he was going to be on the call. He is here. Right. Councillor McPherson. Yeah. So, Councillor McPherson, you have a comment. Technically, we're taking questions at the moment, but it is in relation to something that's said by one of the deputies. Is this a correction or something you wish to say? I will let you.
Oh, thank you, Provost. Yeah, it was just to clarify my position on the comments. It's just I would just like to clarify that the views expressed by the chair of the Perth Civic Trust does not reflect my views on the matter as a committee member of the Perth Civic Trust. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, and that's actually helpful to know for the wider audience. Councillor Harvey, you have a question, and it's for, I think you mean Bobby Bryan as opposed to Bobby Braun.
Yes, my apologies. Thank you, Provost. Yeah, it was Bobby. I'm getting my bronze mixed up. Yes, Bobby, thank you, and thank you everybody else for your presentations. The question I had, you made a comment during your presentation that if we built this at Thimble Row, the footfall into town would likely be limited. Could you give me the basis for that statement? Have you done footfall analysis or other analysis along those lines? Thanks.
Sorry, I should have said at the start of my deputation I was delivering on behalf of David Macklow's ex-Live Active chairman. He's, unfortunately for him, unfortunately for us, he's on holiday in Portugal. But I believe he has the information, but I don't have the information at this time, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Duff, you have a question for Mr. Munro.
Thank you, Mr. Munro. In your presentation, you mentioned that since the closure of Bells, that the sports clubs and facilities haven't been satisfactorily rehoused. And I wondered if you could give us a bit more detail about the impact that that has had on sports clubs and fixtures since it's been closed. Thank you.
I did include examples of that in my paper to you. And from memory, my own sport, volleyball, we need a 2-court facility like as at Perth College, so we can get all our league matches played. The availability of court hire at Perth College last season meant we only had limited space, which we only played half our fixtures. Each team played the other team once, and normally we play each other twice. And the same situation regarding netball. Netball had to move to Strathallan for their unheated facility there, and they had to give up after 2 attempts because it was Baltic, as they said. They have also had to cancel their primary school's netball league, but they managed to resurrect that just this term by playing it outdoors. Their fixtures have been messed up totally because they can't get hall hire space. They're having to play fixtures on their training nights, which means that teams can't work out exactly when they're playing another team until the team is notified. Other table tennis in Perth, they're booking school halls at the moment, and they would like to have 7 tables available. There's only space in the school halls that they've tried for 4. So everything seems to be reduced and more difficult to organise. I appreciate there's going to be a new booking system which will encompass Perth College, but I can see Perth College being overbooked already. In my submission for booking at Perth College, I have asked for 2 courts every Sunday evening, and last season our booking was from 6:30 to 9:30. I've already been informed that they're now closing at 8:30 on a Sunday evening, so they've offered us from 5:30 to 8:30. I have said in my application I'm quite prepared to share my Sunday evening so that we only play once a fortnight rather than every week. But again, I'll wait and find out how that works out. Basically, all clubs and teams are scrambling about to find space anywhere. And the bottom line is that with Perth College being the only 2-court facility that can accommodate 2 basketball courts, 2 volleyball courts, 2 netball courts, the social component of our sport goes out the window, because only having 1 court available means we can only have 3 teams playing on one evening as a triangular, not 12 teams as we currently have. So it is a major issue. And Bell's, fully functioning, had 5 courts, 5 volleyball courts, 5 netball courts, 3 5-a-side courts, and over 20 badminton courts. So there's no comparison with what we had to what we're going to get. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart, you have a question for Mr Munro.
Thanks, Provost. I was actually initially going to ask the very question that the Leader of the Council asked. Firstly, Provost, could we ask the question of Mr Cromwell now in order to inform further questioning about the flooding of Mr Munro? Would that be appropriate, please?
Yes, we'll take it now. Purely, I really don't want to get into the substantive thing, but as a point of clarification, we will take it from Mr Cromwell now if he is able to provide accurate information to inform ongoing questioning.
Morning. So the information has been provided before, but so in terms of the number of floods we've had over the years, and some of the information was right, which was staff managed. Our team were used to levels of flooding at Bells. However, what was incorrect is we did have a significant flood in August of 2020. So, and everybody remember that was a catastrophic flood for us at Perth Leisure Pool, but it was also a very significant flood for us at Bells Sports Centre. Now, of course, in August 2020, it was during the pandemic. So in terms of the impact on whether the venue was open or closed, it was somewhat changeable over that period as we were going back through re-establishing during the COVID arrangements. It was a significant flood. At that time, we were insured. The insurance claim was for roughly, from recollection, about £250,000. The coach and hole floor needed to be replaced. All the main circulation areas had to be lifted, re-screeded, relayed. So it was a very significant one. Obviously, PLP was catastrophic in terms of what was required there, but at Bells, it was still very significant.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stewart, does that help your questioning then? Yes.
Thanks, Provost, and thanks, Mr Cromwell, for that clarification. So, Mr Munro, thanks very much, because I know that we had emailed back and forward about this issue. You provided usefully to members the consulting report, the consultancy report on the flood statement from, I think it's Kaya Consulting. In that, you've referred to the review undertaken by Perth Kinross Council, which followed the October 2023 flooding. But the footnote in the report is actually referring to it, is actually a link to an STV news story rather than the actual report itself, which does say that there were multiple floods. But you mentioned the internal flooding, I think, at Bells Sports Centre. Is that not the same as what the Leader of the Council was asking in terms of the water coming up rather than across the top of the inch? So, you know, the water that came through the open floodgate contributed to the situation, but the Bells would have flooded anyway. So is that internal flooding that you were talking about earlier not a recognition of the point? And doesn't your consultancy report actually point out that there are measures needed, such as bunding, to protect Bells from flooding?
the Scottish Water proposal to spend £6 million in dealing with that drainage issue will take place, I believe, between now and 2027, which should help that situation totally. But again, I'll repeat what John Cassell said. There was no, in his time of tenure, there was no water that, or sewage water that came up through toilets or drains inside Bell Sports Centre. Okay, that's all the information I can give you. I'm not an expert on floods.
Okay, thank you. We've had that answer then. Mr. Leader, you have a further question for the architect.
Thanks. I was just wondering, and I maybe missed it because I didn't get. I wasn't included in the mailing list from Mr. Bryan's presentation, so kind of blindsided by that. I was just wondering. It's actually a question of both. So you've all the information that's apparently in it, Mr. Bryan, that you've given forward, and it seems a detailed plan in that. Why are you now thinking about doing a feasibility on something that you've laid out such plans that you would have thought you would have done all the feasibility before you brought this to us? And the question to the architect was, what's the quantum that you're talking about? Because I see all this capital plans and this lovely design and it all looks good on a floodplain that we'll not get insurance for, but I don't see the capital cost or how we're going to finance the capital cost.
So I would put emphasis on if you weren't included in the proposals sent by David, then I would need to speak to David about why you were exempt from that. If it was my deputation or my thoughts, then it would have went to yourself, because I think as a group we're keen to work with the council, not against the council. We can't work against the council. We need to, work jointly. But yes, I can't remember the other half of your question. Sorry.
It's okay. I think I counted them. I think there was 36 out of the 40 included. So there's some missing. Maybe take a feasibility study on how many people there are elected members would help.
Okay, I think we're moving into things that are not relevant. There was a question there to the architect as well.
Question to me related to the capital cost. We have not done a full feasibility on the cost of the project. It's still at very early stages. I know that it had been passed into the council and a speculative cost had been put against that, but the Community Sports Network have not undertaken a feasibility study yet or put it out to a third-party quantity surveyor, so we can't put a figure on it at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a supplementary question or is it a comment?
No, I was just saying thanks.
Wonderful. Okay, Bailey Ahern next, please.
Thank you. Yeah, my question's for Mr. Monroe with regards to the flooding we've been talking about. Is it not the case that the work that's been carried out on Tay Street actually reduces the flood risk on the North Inch of up to 75%, and that the works that are going to be carried out by Scottish Water are just to ensure that the flooding of the area around the Bell Sports Centre is to be flood free as well?
That is correct. And again, I'll repeat, we met with Mr. Swinney. He was quite adamant that Perth is protected from North Muirton right down to Marshall Place from future floods, providing the floodgates are closed.
Okay, Councillor Duff, you have a question for Mr. Fitchett and Mr. Monroe. Oh, it's been answered. Wonderful. Amazing. Okay, I don't see any further question. Councillor Stewart hasn't managed to get his question into the chat clearly, but I'll bring him in.
Thanks very much, Provost. So it was just following up again on Bailey Ahern's question, my prior question. The consultancy report you sent through talks about the Scottish Waterworks around which are not spec'd out or planned in their current investment period, is my understanding. So 2027 would be the earliest rather than between now and 2027. But the report you're talking about says that those works would protect Bells from a 1 in 30 year event, whereas what we've been talking about are 1 in 200 year events. So wouldn't a 1 in 30 year event, if we're only being protected up to a 1 in 30 year event level, and 1 in 30, it's an unhelpful way to actually present the data. But if we're only being protected up to that level, and we're regularly seeing more flooding than that in terms of 1 in 200 year event severe weather flooding, that's not going to be enough, is it?
Regardless of what facility you put at Bell Sports Centre, whether it be the 3G option or a sports centre, they both suffer the same from a flood. Other facilities adjoining the North End, the rugby club, the bowling clubs, etc., they all have the same problem. The rugby club's about to invest £1 million in their facility. Now, they wouldn't be doing that if they didn't have confidence in the flood prevention schemes that exist already. And I think if you take 1 in 30 years, looking back to what maintenance should be carried out on sports centres, swimming pools, ice rinks, they need at least a major upgrade every 30 years. So what's the difference between one flood coming and work having to be done than maintenance every 30 years? I would hope that the floods don't come as often, but we can never predict that. I think the Council and Scottish Water, everyone's doing their best to protect what we have. And that's the best we can do. We can't predict the future, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for Council. Sorry. Oh, the Architects Council. Sorry, do you?
Apologies, it was just a small point of clarification. The Scottish Water report that has put together 4 proposals, one of which is the super sewer, and the other 3 which are talked to in the Kaya report. My understanding is each of these other 3 offers a 1 in 30 flood protection. So cumulatively, although we can't put a number on it, we would expect it to be higher than a 1 in 30 return.
Okay, Councillor Welch, you have a question for Mr. Munro.
Thank you, Provost. Paul Cromwell mentioned that Bell's Sports Centre is currently not able to be insured because of the flood risk. Have you sought any guidance as to, whether the proposals that you're looking to take forward would be insurable or not, based on the questions that you've heard around and material facts you've heard around both historic flooding, the SEPA flood risk, and the associated, essentially, capital investment that you're asking the Council to make, i.e. who are you expecting to take the risk for these works? Thank you.
The insurance companies are the ones that decide what's insurable and what isn't. Obviously, again, with what has happened with the super sewer and what's about to happen with Scottish Water, these plans and the information available should assist in making a fresh assessment of flood risk. As a group, we're a voluntary group. We've done no research into that, apart from asking for accumulation of reports from various bodies to assist us in our plans. So we think Bells possibly could be assessed for flood risk and be insured, but that needs to be investigated further. And that will only happen, once decisions have been made. So I clarify anything more other than that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Munro. Councillor Duff, you have a question for Mr Munro, so if Mr Munro cannot go far away.
Thank you. Thanks, Head. The response in terms of the capital costs for Bells, but I believe you've also looked at a business plan for the operation of Bells and its running costs under the indoor heated option that you're talking about. And I wonder if you could tell members a bit more about your findings in terms of that business plan and what it means for running costs. Thank you.
Can I hand over to the man who wrote the business plan to explain that? Bill.
Very much. Thank you for your question. Yeah, I spent 4 months putting this business plan together, and we looked at various costs. Utility costs seem to be a major concern, and through talking to our architect, when you have to refurbish a building, which you'll have to do for the 3G option anyway, there's an opportunity to use higher energy efficient cladding and insulation. And we've also suggested we put solar panels on the coaching house roof. And we believe between those two measures, there'll be a significant reduction in the utility cost on the order of 40%. But what struck me was that utility costs are not the biggest item in the cost budgets. Staff at 800,000 is a much bigger number. Maintenance similarly comes down. When you refurbish a building, you clearly don't need to spend the same on maintaining it. And that figure has been benchmarked by Aberdeen Sports Village at a quarter, 25% reduction in the maintenance costs. And in terms of staff costs, they were reduced in several ways. One was the use of IT, the use of access systems. At Aberdeen Sports Village, they spent £100,000 on access systems. So you don't have a reception waiting to book you in. You have a swipe card and you go straight in. Members have apps on their phones to do bookings. They use scheduling, so you don't wander in at 10 o'clock on a Friday night expecting to play badminton for £3. That badminton is scheduled in a particular day, so you don't have staff hanging around waiting to change courts over. It's based on a schedule, and people recognise the schedule. Another big cost is the LAL overhead, which is in today's money about £300,000. And we have proposed, if you're really serious about reducing costs, we would suggest respectively that utilities is not the biggest item, and that can be fixed through solar panels and insulation. But if there was a mind to do it, I know there's an ALIO review coming up. £300,000 is in a turnover of 700,000 is a 36% chunk of your money going in head office costs, and that cost has now been allocated to jurors. So we proposed that if there was a will to do it, you could employ a CEO with a marketing background and 3 managers, IT, HR, and marketing, and that would reduce the cost. And similarly, with regard to the 3G plan, we haven't seen a 3G plan. So our business plan is being compared with 2 or 3 lines in a report. And what we'd like to ask for is, as well as our plan being out there and being scrutinised, we would like the opportunity to scrutinise the 3G plan before councillors can really make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Powdy. I have the Leader of the Council with questions for Mr Bryan.
First of all, the business plan is interesting, but how can you do a business plan when you've no capital costs, no idea how much of building the building is going to cost? Because you have to factor that in, obviously, to the revenue costs of servicing the building. Now, we've not done that work, so the business case, I can't see how it fits together. So that's just a comment. Question to Mr Bryan is that I know that you probably were just relating somebody else's, but can you work in I believe in the industry, shall we say, of construction? What is the industry standard lifespan of a swimming pool? Sorry.
Sorry, no. Yeah. Yeah, but I work for a civil engineering company. We don't necessarily specialise in pools. There are specialist contractors for such. The answer to your question, I don't know.
Thank you very much.
I think I can give you an idea. It's about 30 to 40 years is the industry standard life of a swimming pool.
Okay, well, maybe not.
It's because of the...
This is not going to get into a back and forth. Thank you. Councillor Liz Barrett next, please. Sorry, your question is for whom exactly? Is it Mr. Powrie on the business plan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Powrie, I missed your name at the beginning. It was just what you said about the business plan just now, about scheduling of activities so that there would be a certain time for, say, badminton, and that's the only time that they would have available. So how does that, I mean, I know Mr. Monroe said about groups scrabbling around at the moment to get bookings, so you're not going to have flexibility if that's the approach that you're taking to it, is my understanding. Is that right?
No, there'll be plenty of opportunity. People will understand what the schedule is, okay, so they'll know when various sports are there. At Aberdeen Sports Village, it's buzzing all day with what we call the nifty 50s, people over 50 who need low impact sports. They don't play football, and neither do the 1,100 disabled people in our network, or the majority of women. I accept some women play soccer, but not everyone does. So I'm not saying it would be restricted. I'm just saying that if you looked at the Integratis report, the cost per customer was quite expensive on certain occasions, and that's because you had leisure assistants standing back, moving equipment from A to B for someone walking in off the street. So I was simply saying that by using scheduling, you can match your labour costs, your staff costs, to your customer input.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any further questions, but if anyone has a question that they haven't asked or that I haven't seen, now is your time to indicate. Okay, right. Thank you. Thank you to Mr. Monroe, Mr. Bryan, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Fitchett, and to Mr. Powrie. Thank you very much for your time this morning. You're free to return to the public gallery. Councillors, we are about to break, but before we do, I'd like to invite the Deputy Leader to provide an update from the Scottish Government on the item that we heard at A3.
Thank you, Provost, for allowing me to speak further on this important matter. I just wanted to update the Chamber on developments this morning, and I'm pleased to advise that the Scottish Government has this morning confirmed that the Bellwyn scheme has now been activated to provide the Council with emergency financial assistance in connection with its response to the Scott Street fire. The scheme is designed to alleviate undue financial burden faced by local authorities responding to large-scale emergencies. It covers immediate actions to safeguard life and property or to prevent suffering or severe inconvenience as a result of a disaster or emergency. So, as I say, I just wanted to update members of the public and those in the Chamber of that important development this morning. Thank you.
Mr. Deputy Leader, if you can just perhaps stay where you are, possibly. I have Councillor Forbes, you have a question for the Deputy Leader. This is the risk of making statements that you get questions. Councillor Forbes.
It's a very straightforward question, and it's good news. Obviously, we all welcome this, but I understand the Bellwyn scheme, we have to fund part of it. I just wondered if that was the case, and if anyone in the room knew how much of it we have to fund. Is there a percentage threshold, I think?
Yes, I believe Mr. Walker would be able to give that information.
So under the terms of the Bellwyn scheme, council are expected to find the first 0.2% of their reserves.
So we're waiting on the 25-26 figures coming out, but last year was around about £850,000. So the first £850,000 would fall on the council.
Sorry, I just didn't hear what you said. It must have been a IT thing. I didn't hear what you said there. Could you repeat it?
We bore the first £850,000.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, members, we are going to have a break now. I appreciate everyone has been sitting down for quite a while now. We're going to break until 11:45, so you have about 13 minutes. Thank you very much, members. If you can take your seats again, please. We now move to officers introducing the paper. Claire Mailer, the Deputy Chief Executive, is going to provide a brief introduction to the report. Claire. And then Stephen Crawford, the Strategic Lead for Property Services, is going to provide a presentation to members. Ms. Mailer.
Thank you, Provost. Good morning, councillors. The report that you're being asked to consider today provides an update on the council's ambitious leisure assets review, setting out a bold and joined up £97 million investment plan that will deliver benefits for our communities across the whole area. Before I hand over to Stephen to provide an overview of the proposals, I just want to remind you again of the wider context in which these proposals have been developed. In February, Council made a difficult decision to increase council tax to protect social care, support children with additional support needs, and to empower our communities. And whilst this has enabled us to make some of the increased demands we are facing, and indeed protect services for those in greatest need and protect frontline jobs, there is no spare money, and we are still working to deliver significant savings agreed by Council in previous years. And whilst additional provision for the capital budget was agreed with the 1.25% allocation, an allocation which will prevent the capital budget going bust as quickly as it would have done otherwise, it didn't change the fundamental position of Council in March 23, when increasing construction costs and inflation made the original outline business case for PH2O unaffordable. Giving stability to our capital budget is a real positive, but adding any further pressures to it will very quickly put us back in the same position that we were in. We know that there are many other areas where capital funding is required, and it is important that we retain any flexibility we can to support these. You all know that the cost of maintaining a road network rose from 12 to 17 million per year. And while that money has been invested, and while there has been money invested in roads and bridges, at 10 million in the budget, we are still 42 million short of the amount needed for us to maintain a steady state. And then we have other investment in our school estate, play parks, depots, all of which currently need and will need further investment decisions from you as Council in the coming years. So that's why officers have done everything they can to bring forward proposals which are based on the evidence of actual usage of existing sport and leisure facilities, and critically, which are both financially and operationally deliverable. I want to commend Stephen and his team for the work that they have done in responding to the direction of Council, and importantly, in listening to our communities, in understanding the asks and aspirations of our communities, and in meeting these aspirations with a fantastic, ambitious and exciting family-friendly leisure option, and wider leisure and sports proposals across the area. If supported, these projects will bring the Council's total investment to leisure and wellbeing to an ambitious £142 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Crawford.
Thank you. Let's wait for the presentation to load. Okay, everybody can hear me? Traditionally quite bad at this. Okay, thank you. Good morning, councillors, provost and members of the public. Officers, we've heard the petitions and the deputation, the petition in February. Sorry. We recognise, we've heard the deputations and the petition in February. We recognise the strength of feeling and frustration of the community. We also recognise that there is an impact on Bell's closing, which has meant that clubs have had to try different venues and locations. However, the proposal that was agreed in September last year, informed by the leisure asset strategy and before you today, cannot lose sight of the main driver of affordability. We could not afford to continue with the 3 sites in Perth in either financial or environmental terms. The purpose of this paper today is to propose for implementation 4 actions, growing from the Sport and Leisure Strategy in 23, the Property Asset Management Plan in 24, the Leisure Asset Review in 24, and the Perth Integrated Investment Plan also in 2024, namely options and costs for leisure water at PH2 at Thimble Row as instructed by Council in September, proposals for upgrading Kinross and Crieff swimming pools, which were actions from the Leisure Asset Strategy, report on the consultation and agree next steps for the former Bells Sports Centre, and introduce and seek approval to consider sale of part of Glover Street, previously approved for affordable housing, to Capability Scotland. So to remind members what was approved in September 2024. September approved a facilities mix at a cost of £61 million. This included a large 8-lane pool with a movable floor, teaching pool and toddler splash area, 6-court games hall, gym and studios and indoor play areas. We have squeezed the footprint to follow the instruction of Council to add leisure water, but within a sustainable costs. Costs, however, have increased due to inflation and updated market evidence and intelligence, and also revised programming. However, the inflationary rises are likely to continue and will impact on the capital affordability if there are any further delays in agreeing the scope of the work. Adding leisure water, we have developed 2 options within the instructions of Council, within a similar footprint, environmental standard and within sustainable revenue and capital resources. Option 1 at 70 million adds flumes and an extended splash pad. Option 2 at £74 million adds flumes and a further extended area of splash and leisure. The report in front of you identifies that the difference between each option is marginal in annual revenue terms once built, with an additional 30,000 annual visitors, and in option 2 a total of 60,000 visitors per annum over the original base case. So to conclude, our recommendations are option 2 at £74 million, adding 430 square metres of leisure water pool area to the approved base case, an area which we believe meets the instruction of Council and some of the aspirations of the public. These images are for illustrative purposes and the actual leisure water offering will be developed during detailed design. This is in addition to a larger 8-lane 25-metre pool and a teaching pool in the base case. Bells Sports Centre. Instructions of Council to consolidate 3 into 1 main Perth leisure facilities has meant that Bells became surplus in terms of dry-side sports activities. However, in 2024, the building was listed by Historic and Environment Scotland, and Scottish Water announced that they were investing in flood mitigation works for the building. This meant there was needed an option to consider a new future for Bells, but there was no new money which came with the decision of Historic Environment Scotland. So as with PH2O, the focus has had to be on affordability, both in development and running costs. This is the base on which in September 2024 options were presented to Council, and where it was agreed that the public be consulted about an option of repurposing as an unheated synthetic pitch covered event space within the dome. This was focused on addressing the high demand for synthetic pitches in Perth and Kinross, especially in the winter months, in a cost-effective and environmentally friendly manner, unheated. This approach sits well with other actions from the Leisure Asset Review, focusing via a single consolidated booking system on maximising the use of the many halls and courts that are in Perth Council estate, plus the wider public estate, the UHI, and wider Perth and Kinross area as part of the school estate. Whilst I'm not saying this is perfect, we've done this last year with Lal and my team have fitted in many of the former clubs into the school estate. PH2O will add a further 6-court games hall into the mix. Since Bells has closed, LAL and PKC have coordinated to offer most of the previous users at Bells alternative accommodation within the school estate in 24-25, maximising the school estate during the winter months, and currently are taking us for the winter-spring terms. We included a capacity study that I took on this accommodation within the report. A strong response was received on the consultation proposals, with nearly 2,000 responses, and with 60% of the council's response agreeing with the proposal. The Community Sports Network has presented proposals today as an alternative proposal, and whilst attractive, these appear both far more costly in capital terms and likely will cost more on annual revenue running costs. The report seeks approval to start work to remove the rack concrete roofing and asbestos safely within the building as a phase 1 enabling works, whilst progressing feasibility and engagement to develop technical proposals and an operating model for the unheated covered sports pitch event space. As a footnote, and Rick Haynes is available on the call, our flooding manager, to take any detailed questions. Bells has been mentioned already, has been flooded 5 times in the last 7 years. Proposals will be developed as part of the design to mitigate against the 1 in 30 flood risk that remains after Scottish Water have completed their investment. We consider this to be an unacceptable risk of 1 in 30 years. Also, the building will remain uninsurable in its current state for flooding. The sewer flooding is a historic one. We've talked about 5 times in the last 10 years, but I think it goes well beyond those 7 years. Permission on Bells commencing and repurposing will accelerate the programme and mitigate ongoing costs as a vacant building, including business rates of about £250,000 and other costs totalling about £400,000 per annum if we don't move forward with Bells. Kinross and Crieff swimming pools. The Leisure Asset Review also instructed officers to come forward with proposals to address energy efficiency and condition of the 32 and 28-year-old respectively wet facilities in Kinross and Stern campus. We've already heard today about how long wet facilities last, and I would concur with what was said on the 30 to 40 years. Proposals have been developed that will reduce energy efficiency and address condition issues at the facilities, much of the plant being beyond its life cycle, and with the aim of having fewer breakdowns and extending the life of these important local assets by at least 20 years. This investment will benefit over 200,000 annual users of these local facilities outside of Perth. To note, in accordance with the Climate Action Strategy Plan, this investment will significantly contribute to our energy use and carbon emissions by reducing our direct energy emissions by 77% across these 3 buildings. And in the context, this brings a gross 10% reduction of our direct emissions from our buildings when you bring LAL into the council portfolio. To summarise, if approved today, this investment will add to already approved investments in the leisure estate. Blairgowrie, £36 million, and Pitlochry High School last year at £8.7 million. This brings the total investment in leisure estate to £142 million over the next 5 or so years, and future-proofing the community's main leisure assets for a significant period going forward. Lastly, in late 2024, we were approached by Capability Scotland, who were having difficulty obtaining a new site in Perth from their current Upper Springland home. It is facing unsolvable severe flooding risks and challenges for its residents and clients. A previous alternative site in Perth had proved unaffordable and had fallen through. High-level indicative plans and assessments have been made at Glover Street that was allocated previously for affordable housing in September 2024. This paper proposes that we drive as much benefit from our asset base alongside the approved affordable housing as part of a broader Glover Street site master plan. This approval will allow us to sign a memorandum of agreement on redeveloping together and share costs, infrastructure and benefits at this site. My many colleagues in the chamber and online are happy to take questions on this paper, and I also believe we've got Capability Scotland in the room as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Crawford. We do indeed have Paul Cromwell from Live Active Leisure and Cal McGregor from Capability Scotland in the room to support questions that may be relevant to them. And I have a lot of questions. Starting with Councillor Michelle Frampton, please.
Thank you, Provost. My question is for Capability Scotland. What would happen if Capability Scotland cannot get this site? Is there a risk they would have to leave Perth?
Hello. I think that in answer to the question, it's unlikely at this stage that we'd anticipate leaving Perth if we were unsuccessful at this site. But obviously, it would. Us further back, as has previously been mentioned, we have been on this project for some considerable time and we've progressed to a reasonable stage, and unfortunately, it proved to be unaffordable. So we have a very exciting opportunity here, which we're keen to explore further. So yes, I think we would intend to stay in Perth if at all possible.
Thank you very much, Mr McGregor. Next question is from Bailey.
Thank you very much, Provost, and thank you to officers for and the deputies obviously earlier as well. My question is specifically about leisure water, and by leisure water what I mean is that if we were to go to Perth Leisure Pool this evening or over the weekend, we would see there's quite a large body of water there for families to do general family play. So I mean leisure in the truest sense, the sort of water where kids are sort of bobbing around, if I can coin a term. On that note, how much of that water space in square meters or square feet is offered in the option 2? And in that, I'm excluding the sort of catch pool from the flumes. So how much water is available for kids and families and other people who want to just do unstructured swimming or bobbing around, as I might say? Thanks.
Maybe ask John Fife to answer the question more in detail, but if I was to say that the current wet areas in the leisure pool and the main areas the main swimming areas are totaling about 1,800 square meters. The new proposals, the wet areas are totaling about 1,600 square meters. So whilst there's a smaller leisure, specific leisure function, there is the size of your training pool has gone up by 60%. So there's a comparison there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rebeck, you have 2 questions. If you want to ask both of them now, please.
Thanks very much, Provost. It's just, I suppose, in the context of being the convener of learning and families. So my 2 questions are around the school estate, and I'm just wondering, in a broad sense, how does the sport and leisure offering in our school estate compare now to previously over a period of time? Basically, how does it compare? And secondly, and related to that, I think it is really important that we make full use of our school estate, and I'm really intrigued as to the proposal around the single booking system. So I guess the question is, how important is that single booking system and how do you see it working? But how does our school estate compare to when Bells was built, I guess? Thank you.
I'll answer the first one. I mean, Bells was built at a time that we didn't have campuses. We didn't have forecourt games halls in any of our secondary schools. So when it was built, it was way beyond. We've now got 11 secondary schools in Perth and Kinross with fantastic facilities. And my paper is emphasising, and I think our council strategy was, how do we use our existing facilities better? What I'm going to do is ask maybe Andy Cook to talk about the process that they went through last year, post Bells, of matching all with LAL, matching all the clubs into the accommodation we've got.
Thanks. Yeah, so in terms of the work we've been doing since the Bells closure, the internal council team and Live Active Leisure have been working much more closely to allocate space. We write out to all clubs, and this is sort of a phased approach to where we're going in terms of single booking system. So we're working much more collaboratively in a view to move into that single approach, as opposed to, there's a lot of emphasis on single booking system. It's actually about a single point of contact for clubs to get access to all of the facilities. Having brought now Perth UHI into that mapping exercise, we're able to, last year was successful, this year will be more successful in terms of matching users to appropriate venues across the estate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bailey Ahern, and I see you have a couple of questions quickly before I let you come in. If members do have multiple questions that they know about at this point, when you're called to speak, please ask all of your questions because it will speed things up. Secondly, can everyone please put the mics in front of your mouths? I appreciate that you all think that you are the loudest people in the world, and some of us might agree with you. However, there are people in the audience who cannot hear, and there are people online who are struggling to hear as well. So if you can make sure the microphone is right in front of you to help with people participating in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. My first question is for Mr. Crawford, and it's the same one I asked Alistair, the architect, about the roof on the Bells Sports Centre, as to whether it would have been designed for a heated environment. Does he think that the dome will be structurally sound if the building's unheated, and will there be any effect on the laminate glue holding the roof together?
We're doing those investigations at the moment. So I've got a specialist timber expert in Bells at the moment, going through and ensuring the structural integrity of all the existing glue lambs. The glue lambs are 60 years old. They have been subjected to floods over quite a period of time. But if you go back to when the original, to maybe partly answer your question, if you go back to the original concept, at the back of Bells, all of the glue lamb was actually exposed to the elements in that. So I can, my thought, the use of glue lamb exposed is widely used throughout Europe. But what we're doing is to inform if a future feasibility, doing those structural tests now.
Okay, thank you. My second question then is regarding the Capability Scotland. How much are they paying for the land, and was it open to the normal procurement process, and was anybody else offered the land as well?
The price has not been discussed yet.
And the procurement process?
There has been no procurement process on the basis that this isn't something that the council has necessarily gone out to look for in terms of partnering. This has been something that's come in response to a request for help exploring alternative sites for Capability Scotland. So it's not as if anything like this was going on the market. It's being earmarked in principle for affordable social housing. And this discussion has taken place, and this opportunity has arisen as a result of a need identified by Capability Scotland and an approach to the council, which is why it's here in principle as a decision for council to make as to whether or not this is something that we wish to pursue.
Okay, thank you very much.
Provost, if I could maybe just add something very briefly. The council has had a long-standing relationship with Capability Scotland prior to my arrival 3.5 years ago. But in the time that I've been here, we've met with Capability, with Callum, Brian and colleagues on regular occasions. Initially, that was to discuss how we would integrate Capability to the Bertha Park development, work with our education estate, work with planning colleagues, etc. And it was over the last year that those conversations moved when Capability had to launch a fundraising campaign to secure the necessary finance to try and deliver on Bertha Park. But ultimately, that is a development that they are no longer able to secure and to confirm. So we spoke to them, they looked at other sites across Perth. We had spoken about the development of leisure opportunities because we were keen to look at things like a therapy pool. And it was through that conversation that the potential for looking at the Glover Street site came up. So we had had that conversation reflecting the council's commitment to its vision and to its corporate priority about protecting some of the most vulnerable adults that we've got in our community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Executive. I wasn't against the possibilities of what could happen. It was just understanding, and you've answered that question in full. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I ask all members and indeed officers to be succinct in asking your questions and indeed answering the questions, because I have 12 members currently wanting to come in, some with more than one question, and we do want to get through the business. Councillor Allen next, please.
Thank you, Provost. And if you don't mind, it'll be two succinct questions. The first one is with regards to insurance. There was a question earlier asked to one of the deputies, and I think it was answered by one of the officers to suggest that it's uninsurable. If we spend £10 million, as has been put on the commitment there, £10 million, is it easiest to insure an open or a closed environment? Thank you.
If I can answer that by saying the proposals in £10 million would take into account the residual risk that's left after the Scottish Waterworks. You know, Rick's on the call, but I probably can say he's gone through a range of suggestions. I mean, it's basic stuff like closing, air bricks, but actually the nuclear option is raising the floor slightly to take it out of that. But I would need to do a full topographical on that. But I think what I'm suggesting within the capital costs to actually de-risk the building and make it fully insurable for the longer term.
Thank you. And my second one was with regards to bells as well. In the consultation, it suggested that 80% people wanted to retain it, and that over 60% agreed to have it as an open space. Can you help me understand what the other options were, please?
When we went to consultation, we asked questions about bells and the public's attachment to bells and the amenity that it provided on the North Inch, which were more than sport. And again, there's public toilets, there's a range of other activities. We didn't suggest other options, and actually it was really good that the Community Sports Network came in with, well, here's a potential to refurbish it. The whole basis of my proposal last year was to bring forward, as a result of the property being, one, declared effectively surplus with our strategy 3-into-1 facility, 2, the building being listed. We then had to say, right, what are we going to do? The council decision came back into our portfolio, and I said in my presentation, the do nothing option will cost us about 400,000 a year as a vacant building, and everything's set. The whole legislation and the rates legislation is everything set against people sitting with empty buildings. So what I was trying to do was coming up with something that was usable. Again, usable for synthetic pitches. We've got an insatiable demand for those from all fronts. And you're right, other people, including Genefield Swifts, are building those out. But in the winter, a covered space, and again, that the model of an old building being converted into a synthetic pitch, football pitch, is something that's working in Dundee on a commercial basis. So I was looking for something that was low in capital cost, hence unheated, and certainly low in ongoing revenue costs. And that's what the proposal was.
Can I just come in and add to that and draw members' attention to page 17, the last point under 3.9. In September, officers were instructed to seek the views of community in relation to the repurposing of Bell Sports Centre for the future use as an unheated multi-use sports pitches event. That's what we went out to consult on as instructed by council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Braun next, please. Do you have another question, Councillor?
It's not a question, it's just a follow-up. So we don't actually know what...
If it's not a question, you can come back to it in comments. This is questions.
Yeah, it's basically a furtherance to the question I just asked.
So is that a supplementary question then?
Yes.
Right, phrase it as a question.
Thank you. Why weren't within the consultation other options discussed?
Chief Executive.
Maybe I'll just come in just to reaffirm the position that's already been stated. Officers have to act under the instruction of council. Council had already made the decision to look at the consultation around the unheated option. It was not in the gift of officers to introduce other options. That was the decision of council. That's what council officers implemented.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Provost. I've got 3 questions, if I may. I'm happy to split them if you wish. I'll go. The first question is following up on what was said in the deputations, Mr. Crawford. There's concerns about using Thimbleborough car park, which we know, and also Capability Scotland would like to utilise some of the land. My question is, my understanding is you can't turn an existing building into a passive house design, but you can make it energy efficient, as we were talking about for Kinross and Crieff. A point was made that the fabric of both PLP and Dewars is good. Is it not a feasible option to refurbish both, which would, and the topography of land there allows, if that was done for Capability of Scotland, to have their portion of land there. You'd also have the option of a heat exchange device in place, which would make it even more energy efficient. Is that not an option we should be considering now? Bear in mind Capability Scotland's involvement and the possibilities with solar panels, etc. And if that wasn't one, to double barrel at the question, the concept of what we're looking at now is the new design with option 2, could that not be built on Glover Street and linked to Dewars with more heat exchange option?
Councillor Braun, I think can I just add to that before Stephen comes in? The paper that you see before you today is based on the decision that was made by council to build PH2O on the Thimbleborough site. So that is what we're asking elected members to consider in the chamber today. That decision was made by council in September.
I understand what you're saying, but is it not a viable option then that we could use that site, which would be a lower cost possibly, which will allow money for bells? Sorry.
Members will remember in September last year, I produced. We came up with a whole range of options using Dewars, using the Perth Leisure Pool, and building new for those options. So we did consider using the existing structures informed by condition surveys for Perth Leisure Pool and Dewars in accommodating the agreed facilities mix, and at that time the additional ask of curling. So we did consider at that time, and the recommendation to council was to do a new build at Thimbleborough, and council agreed that. And also, if I can just answer your question of could we do all of that and also accommodate Capability Scotland? You can, but I think then you'd run into the problem, dare I say, of not having enough parking on the site. Because what you don't have at that site with all that built in is a Canal Street multi-storey car park, very, very close to that.
Yep.
Okay.
Second question. Yeah, we're talking about parking then. Sorry, we're going to go to the next bit then. Thimbleborough, where are people going to park who want to come to this, first of all, to the new PH2O? I've driven past it many times. Different days a week, different times, and it's not full. I agree with you, but there are cars parked there. Where are those people going to go? And the third point is linked to it is there are people who live nearby who have residence permits that park there. Where will they park at night? So it comes into the parking, but particularly those people who visit the new PH2O.
I'm going to ask my colleague Lachlan to answer that in terms of overall accommodation, but I would just remind members, one of the appendixes in the paper was the history of Thimbleborough and what we've done for between I think 2012 and the station. It's come back to council on quite a number of occasions, not as a car park, and that was a former council decision.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. So in terms of the overall availability of parking within Perth itself, we have about 56% of it is occupied on a daily basis during the weekday, and at the weekend that's the same from the parking survey that we did in 2024. Now, in terms of where you're going to park for PH2O, I've looked at the availability of car parks in and around Thimble itself. So if we take Thimble away, obviously we're going to have to displace the people that are parking there at the moment. And where do they go? So there's a number of options that are available. You've got the Canal Street multi-storey car park that is currently utilised, that will become under the control of Perth Kinross Council in September. We've also got the nearby car parks. You've got the Lickney Street car park, you've got West Mill Street, you've got Milne Street, north and south. You've also got Millwind as well, which are all within a close proximity of the facility that we're proposing there. I mean, you're talking about a walking distance of five minutes or so from Canal Street round to Thimble Row itself. So I don't envisage there'll be a huge impact in terms of the walking distance there for members of the public. Regarding permit holders, they would be displaced to other car parks across Perth, and where they would go, that would be a matter for the parking services to consider.
If I may, Professor, a supplementary on that one. It's not my third question, but it's a supplementary. From the residents' point of view, you've talked about Millwind and West Mill. Could one of those be made residents only for those people who have residence permits? Because, you know, people who live nearby don't want to be walking, you know, at great distances just to park their cars. Is that an option? And could we have a commitment on that?
I think we can consider those options and consult the impacted people on that, and also council as well, if that's an option that we would like to consider in the future.
And if I might want the last question, sorry, comes back to the survey again, and I understand what Mr. Glenn said and what Claire said. 1,198 seem to have said yes to an unheated event space, but of that 843 then commented that they preferred it to be like it was, or whatever their comments were. They're all in here. I can't say that it's not a fair survey, it's not right to say that, but should we have had included in that an option for them to say yes, they want it status quo? Sorry, I forgot.
I'll answer that. The strategic decision on the property was the strategy was 3 into 1. We considered where was the option. The option was it was never Bells was too small a site and its transport links were inappropriate. So the status quo was not an option, and when it was listed, that we then had to come up with the question and say, well, what we want to do. We'd already made the decision to take away dry sports from Bells.
Okay, Councillor Cuthbert next, please.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, I'm not concerned about spending the £1 million on RAC and asbestos. I think that's good money, well spent on sorting Bells out. But I'm just wondering, the other 9 million that we're talking about spending on Bells, is that going to be predicated on the engineer's report in terms of the structural soundness of the glue lam, etc.? And also, have we actually gone to Historic Environment Scotland and asked them if they will approve the unheated open space option rather than the enclosed one at the moment?
Okay, to answer your first question, obviously we are undertaking, as the council gave me approval through FNR, to advance funding to do some of these investigations at Bells to inform any future feasibility studies. So there is that question of, you know, that I need to be 100% confident that the 60-year-old existing structure can stand the test of time in any investment going forward. That's what we're doing. In terms of Historic Environment Scotland, last year prior to council, I circulated the feasibility studies that had undertaken there. Much of the information which had included in the reports to Historic Environment Scotland, and they came back to me saying that whilst not approval, for the plans. They were satisfied that whatever we were proposing reflected the importance of the architectural aspects of the building, and they were happy to work with us going forward if we came up with a sustainable use for the listed building, because the last thing Historic Scotland want is a vacant building, you know, a building on their important buildings at risk that sits vacant. So I don't have approval. I've already shared our plans with them, and they've written back to me saying they would be keen to work with us. Hence my comments that their big importance is the dome, and it was one of a kind at the time, and it was the earliest structure at the time.
Yeah, what I'm really looking for is a commitment that we won't spend the full £9 million and then find out, well, Glulam's not going to work, or Historic Environment Scotland's against it. And I don't want to find ourselves in the position we did with Destiny Bridge, where we spent a huge amount on the development and design and so on, and that kind of predicated the final decision on it.
I am confident that it will I will come back at an early stage with saying that it's technically viable within a cost envelope.
Okay, Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, Provost. This is a question, in fact, it's probably two for Mr. Cromwell. First one is quite a broad question with regard to leisure water. And you, being the operator of these facilities, what do you want to see? What do you want? You're dealing with a structure that has breakdowns, and also the parking element for the customer base. Is that going to impact any new structure? So, and then my next question was about, it was mentioned one of the deputations about netball and volleyball availability or lack of for the demand. The supply is not meeting the demand. Could you comment on that as well, please? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. So in terms of what do we want, I think we've always been consistent, which is we wanted the best and most sustainable facilities that we possibly could for Perth. And we shared the ambition that many people have, but we recognise the financial constraints. And as most of you know, this PH2O has been something that we've been trying to get over the line now for well over a decade. That urgency is still there in terms of replacing the PH2, the Perth Leisure Pool that we have, which has been a great building, but has reached, I think we talked earlier about the lifespan of a venue. Perth Leisure Pool is now 37 years old. So in terms of a replacement, we've had different versions of that over the years in terms of what we felt would be the best. We are where we are now with a recommendation which reflects everybody's views, I think, in terms of that legacy that we have for providing leisure space. And I think that was the single strongest element that came out of the discussions from the meeting last year. So I'm extremely pleased that a significant amount of leisure feature space is included in the paper today, and is the recommendation from officers. It's not going to be exactly the same as what we have now, but what we have now is for 40-year-old design. So I am excited about what the features could be, and I think there's a real opportunity there for us to have further engagement with the public about what this 400-500 metre space is going to have. But obviously, in terms of the availability and exciting new innovations that are around leisure features, has changed substantially in 40 years. So I remain hopeful for that. In terms of PH2O, it's always been about that consolidation, and that's not only in terms of customer experience and customer journey, it's also been about the fact that we needed to make financial efficiencies because the current model we had was not viable. So in terms of that customer journey, it still has the principal activities under the roof. So we welcome that. In terms of car park, we've looked at various models. We've looked at models on Glover Street. We've looked at models on Thimble Row. The view that's been presented is that regardless of where that particular facility is, that there would be changes to the car park availability, and therefore they would broadly mirror each other. So in terms of having the facility at Thimble Row, there's logistical benefits, and the logistical benefits are really clear. The other version means that we're either closing Dewars or potentially closing Perth Leisure Pool, and that would become a significant construction site for a significant amount of time. So as an operator, I want continuity of service. By having the build off-site, it maintains that.
And I suppose if I look closer to what's been happening recently, we've got Blairgowrie there that isn't open yet, that we hoped would be open at the start of this year. But by having it off-site, if you like, to a degree, then obviously we've still got the benefit of being able to offer leisure services in the old recreation at the time being. So from an operator's perspective, logistically, Thimble Row works from that perspective. I can't comment on the wider impact on Perth City in terms of the car parking arrangements. Finally, in terms of netball volleyball, then I think we have to, we have to accept that there's been an impact on sports hall activity by closing bells, and I don't think anybody's suggesting that isn't the case. What we have been trying to do, and as Mr. Cook said earlier, we've done it pretty well, is how do we work with clubs to maximise the estate that's available to us. We did that at pretty short notice last year. We did a pretty good job. I think we're talking about 58 out of 60 requests that was satisfied, and I think that within an hour of the request or something like that. We didn't manage to accommodate everybody. This year we have managed to bring Perth UHI into the discussions, so that means that we can strategically plan across broader sports halls, and as the deputy said earlier, that it brings in a significant facility because it's a 6-court hall, but it's got the ability to have 2 team spaces, which the deputies mentioned this morning, and that is quite crucial. So we have that now. So we're starting the process again now. We've suggested ways that we think we can streamline it so that there is a single point of service, which would be LEL. We think we can add value to it. We also have a sports development team, so they're also close to discussions with clubs. So we can do that. And at the same time, we still think there's more opportunities in terms of how do we maximise further. What can we do in the high schools more than we have? What can we do with some primary schools? What can we actually do? So that's the next stage. So I remain hopeful, but we have to recognise, and I do recognise, that there are pinch points. There's pinch points during the day in terms of access to facilities, and again, that's something we need to have a look at in terms of how do we access campuses better going forward. And there's obviously still there's going to be pinch points in terms of winter season, peak sport demand, 6 to 9 in the evenings. And that's something we will have to manage as best we can with the estate we have. And obviously when we get the 6-court hall from PH2O, that will have 2 team sport areas within it, and that will provide the capacity that we've got some pinch points in, and obviously also the daytime access that we're tight on at the moment. Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to thank him for that concise, informative answer.
Thank you. Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Provost. I have 2 questions. First one for Mr. Fife, perhaps, and the second for Mr. McGregor of Capability Scotland. My first question to Mr. Fife is, we've all received mail from residents with a keen interest in this issue we're debating today. Can you tell the Chamber whether to have been a development of the Perth Leisure on the Perth Leisure Pool site of a new pool there, rather than what we're now talking about and what we've already decided at Thimble Row? What period of time would that site have been unavailable as a consequence of the construction works that were envisaged?
Thanks. So the construction phase for the new PH2O on either Thimble Row or the Glover Street site is about 2.5 years. So you're looking at 2.5 years of actual construction. I think when this question was raised in September, what we said was there would be significant disruption to the buildings as that was constructed for about 2.5 years.
Okay, thank you. That's clear. Now, Mr. McGregor, thank you for your attendance today. I was going to say this morning, but it's this afternoon. We've heard from the Chief Executive earlier about the other sites that were looked at by yourselves in connection with a relocation, and I understand there were a number under consideration, but that the Capability Scotland strongly favours the site at Glover Street. can you please, in your own words, explain to elected members who perhaps aren't fully aware of the residence requirements at Upper Springland currently, what benefits you see in particular with the Glover Street site in relation, if this were to be approved today, and what that will bring to the people you serve. And can you also, for the avoidance of any doubt, because there's been different information bandied about, can you also be clear as to the flood risk and building condition issues that you currently face at Upper Springland, and why it is imperative that you seek to move in the short term or medium term, if at all possible? Thank you.
Answering your questions, Councillor, I'll give you an abridged. In answering your question, I'll give you an abridged version or history of where we've come from. Yep, sorry. Is that better? That's better. Okay, so initially we had looked at Upper Springland as a potential master plan to redevelop the site. One of the early pieces of work that was undertaken was a flood risk assessment. The site has been subject to flooding, as some of you may be aware, and that's been from both the river in the past and also from the land round about the site. In exploring that further, it became clear that in order to redevelop the site and master plan the site, it would require significant flood defences beyond that which currently exists. There is already a flood wall on the site which has been extended in the past. And my history with Upper Springland is I was the registered manager there for 5 years, and during that period of time we had some significant anxiety on more than one occasion where the water levels in the Tay rose to very close to the top of the flood wall, and that also resulted in some concern about the land that the wall sits on and potential piping that's water coming under the flood wall and bursting through on the Upper Springland site. So there were significant concerns, and really those concerns were consolidated into a greater understanding that in fact in order to build on that site we would need to extend the wall significantly higher, and it was unlikely that we get planning permission, and that still didn't mitigate the risk fully. So on that basis, we then determined, and our board of trustees asked us to look for alternative locations. So the site at the moment and the accommodation at the moment is itself 40 plus years old, and is certainly not all that it could be in terms of both its kind of efficiency and effectiveness, both from the perspective of the kind of energy efficiency, but also the opportunities that it offers for the people that live there. One of the things for the residents of Upper Springland is that many of them are wheelchair users, and over an extended period of time the size of wheelchairs has increased significantly. And in order to get the wheelchairs in and out of rooms, we've had to extend the doorways. So this physical space that people are occupying and requiring in terms of turning circles and access to bathrooms has changed and essentially has increased. And our approach to this new development is to ensure that we look at these issues and address these issues, not just in terms of physical space, but also the opportunities that particularly Glover Street would offer, which others didn't, which was to be close to the city centre. And any of the councillors who've ever been along the Isla Road, you may well have seen residents of Upper Springland in their wheelchairs with staff going in and out of town, which is in itself a fairly significant journey. And obviously that will change, and I think that will certainly encourage more of the people that live at Upper Springland to get out and about more. I think it's also fair to say that there is a great deal of excitement amongst our residents about the opportunity for change. That's tinged with some degree of, for some, trepidation and anxiety, and it's our job to ensure that we try to give them the confidence that that the new opportunity that will exist for them will indeed be better. But I would say that the recent announcement about the potential for us to relocate to Glover Street has been met almost universally with a kind of positive message. And I was at Upper Springland before I came here today, and the message and feedback that I'm getting is one of significant excitement and an emotional response, frankly, from some people as to the opportunity that this brings.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Mayor next, please.
Thank you. I'd like to ask how the calculation was made in the additional usage that could be expected between options 1 and options 2. I'm not a statistics person, so I'm just interested, how do you calculate what we can expect as usage? Thank you.
The business model for this was developed by Integratis Consulting, who I think are on the line. But it was based on their knowledge of the market, and again supported by Lal. So they can give some comment online. Is Graham or Andy Bain online? I think that answers. Maybe that answers that question, but Integratis have been working with Paul Cromwell and Lal, and have.
Sorry, Stephen. I couldn't get myself off mute there. Yeah, just a very quick answer to that one. We have 7 years, including COVID data, for Lal activities all over, but particularly for the leisure pool. And what we were able to do, one of them was based on a survey we did back in '87, just to see who's coming in and who goes to leisure water and who goes to swimming. But we were able to look at that and go, okie doke. First of all, with a full leisure provision that's not too far away from what they have, what does that look like, and what would that usage look like compared to present day? And then we were able to taper it back a bit when we looked at the middle option to go, okie doke, that amount of space and the amount of slides, and just in our knowledge of other places, that says if it's not as good as you can make it, people will come. They might come once or twice, but the return usage of those customers will be nowhere near as high as if you go for option 2 and the full Buna, as it were. So that really leads us to go, you've got option 1, which is where we are, the middle option, which is somewhere between the leisure usage of Perth Leisure Pool as it is now, and that option, and then option 2, where we have the full Buna that says, okie doke, we think we can get pretty close to what you have just now. I hope that answers.
Yes, thank you very much.
No worries.
Thank you. Councillor McCall next, please.
Thank you, Provost. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Provost, I have visited the Upper Springlands sites that Capability Scotland currently use, and so I recognise Mr McGregor's description of the Glover Street site offering opportunities to residents for greater access to the city, and I expect greater opportunity for wider community engagement. So I welcome and fully support the proposals for that relocation, providing also new homes and continuity of crucial services, plus, very importantly, saving over 200 jobs. So my question for officers is if they can advise me what the impact of this relocation, if successful, will have on the wider regeneration ambitions for Perth City Centre. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor McCall.
First of all, in addition to obviously the social benefits that you have highlighted, there will be some economic environmental benefits for the relocation of Capability Scotland to the Glover Street site. First of all, it's to anchor a large employer. 200 people employed in that facility. It is a large employer for Perth and Perth Kinross. So securing these jobs in Perth, it's quite important. Additionally, these jobs are in the sector which is quite important for the economy of Perth and Kinross. The care sector is a growing sector, as we know with the demographics that we have. And that will obviously help to strengthen that sector by developing, I would say, a center of expertise in that sector. There will also be benefits for the skills, agenda for Perth and Kinross, because that's a sector where obviously struggling to recruit. But having a centre in the city centre will allow people who are obviously looking for jobs or even training and acquiring new skills to access these easier than if it was at Upland Springland. In relation to placemaking, in terms of attracting investment, I think this is quite important to show that as a council, but also as private or charities are investing in their facilities, because that will give a signal to the private sector market to say, the public and charities are working together to invest in a key site in a city location. As a private investor, I can go and develop some complementary, investment towards that. That's particularly important because the site is also close to the bus and railway station, for which we are obviously trying to attract some investment, public investment, but also to make connections in terms of other private investment, and also helping connections from Perth to, other economic centres in Scotland.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes next, please.
Thank you, Provost. I have 4 questions. They're all very straightforward, and I'm sure we'll be very quick to ask and answer. My first question was already asked by Bailey, but I'm not convinced from the answer he got. It was regarding the comparison in leisure water between the current pool and the proposed pool. He asked about that comparison. He referred to it as bobbing around water. I think quite a good phrase, but I think the answer he got was actually the entirety of what was referred to as the wet space. So can I ask for a comparison between the actual leisure water in the current pool and the proposed pool?
I'll ask John Fife to answer
that. Right, thanks. So it's quite an interesting comparison because we're not comparing exactly like for like here, but what we've got here in the existing PLP is about 800 square metres of pool halls. So you've got a 5-lane training pool in the training hall, and you've got 1,100 square metres of leisure water area. So what we're proposing here is 430 square metres of leisure water space and a training pool which is 8 lanes and 25 metres, which can be divided up to provide other leisure water areas, such as the inflatables that were presented in September. Now, it'll depend on LAL's final operating model for that training pool, but you're adding in an additional, from what we have modelled, about another 160 to 200 square metres, depending on how many lanes are closed for, if you like, the bobbing about water and leisure water. So when you add that into the 430 square metres, that will give you a more accurate comparison.
Okay, thanks for that. My second question is regarding car parking, and it's to do with the potential visitor numbers that we've been presented with, and I'm interested where those numbers came from, and if the fact that there will be no car parking space nearby the current proposal, if that was factored into it. I know we got an answer that there was a car park space 5 minutes away, but Google Maps is telling me it's actually 9 minutes away. So you've quite a difference if you've got 3 kids and wet towels and all that kind of stuff. So interested in more detail on the numbers, where they came from.
Thank you. So in terms of the numbers that we have for car parking availability nearby, sorry, I've written these down here. Sorry.
Oh, my question was actually about the visitor numbers to the new pool, not necessarily about the parking numbers.
the parking was taken into consideration, the parking availability was taken into consideration by the leisure consultants in developing the business model.
That's great, thank you. My third question. It seems that we can build one building next to another one. We do it with schools all the time. You referenced that we've done it at Blairgowrie, which is great. I'm wondering why the current site where the current pool is seems to be the only site that we're not able to do that.
Thanks for the question. It's not that it's impossible to build on that site. It's just that the nature of the site with the services, utilities, and the actual drainage solution that's there right now, building a leisure pool on the site would be complex and probably quite high risk.
That's great, thanks. And my final questions for Capability Scotland. I just wonder, slightly throwing you a curveball here, if you were to be offered the opportunity to build your facility on Thimble Row on stilts, maintaining a public car park underneath, would that be of interest to you?
So the assessment that we've undertaken to date has looked at the potential of the existing design to be placed on Thimble Row, and Thimble Row is not big enough for our current design. We would need to reconfigure that. I talked earlier about the size of the rooms, and so essentially the space that we can use, we can realign, reconfigure the accommodation, but we can't fit it all onto the Thimble Row site.
I guess there's no limit. Well, there is a limit in terms of planning, but there is the opportunity to go higher. Is that something that you've ever considered? Would you consider?
So it is a consideration. We did consider it in relation to Upper Springland itself, in relation to the potential flood risk, to actually essentially build at the very top of the site, and that there are problems with that in that it continues to create anxiety. So in relation to Thimble Row, I think our bigger issue would be with the care inspectorate, because we're putting people who as I've talked about, are wheelchair users and have mobility issues onto the first floor, which everyone would be first floor and above. And I think we would fall foul of the care inspectorate and their expectations of the availability of space.
Okay, is that all your questions then, Councillor Forbes? Thank you. Wonderful. Bailey next, please.
Thank you very much. I think it probably is a bit of a follow-up to one of Councillor Forbes' lines of inquiry. I was interested in when we have the situation when at Glover Street the Capability Scotland facility is being constructed, would Jubbers and the current leisure pool still be in operation while Capability Scotland are building on site? Thank you.
Where we are, we're right at the beginning of this project. There's a whole range of issues. We've got plans for affordable housing. In terms of programming and that interface, our ambition at the moment is to build our new PH2 as quick as possible. But there's a whole range of issues like utilities, like the drainage and everything that might mitigate against Capability Scotland doing any construction when the swimming pool is in operation, because the drainage solution for the whole site might actually be on the Perth Leisure Pool site. So all of that detailed consideration needs to be considered to be able to say that.
Okay, Bailey Brock next, please.
Thank you, Provost. My question is actually on item 4.32, page 26. What being identified for Crieff. While I welcome this investment into the Crieff swimming pool, which is coming up to 27-year-old this year, is there any idea on at this moment in time what the timescale of the works are and the closure of the pool while works are being carried out? Do we have that?
The straight answer is no, But I think where we, in terms of prioritisation, Kinross is not in good is in a worse condition than Crieff, and that would probably take the first of our focus. I think in looking at how we do swimming pools equally, what we don't want to do is have 2 swimming pools out of operation in Perth and Kinross at one time, because when one's out of operation for refurbishment, the swimming clubs will migrate to other pools for that time. So there is a programming issue.
Thank you. That answers my question on that one.
Thank you, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Provost. I think part of my question's just been asked, but just in more detail regarding both Lochleven and Kinross and the Crieff one. The elements within the survey work that was done to look at and I'll pinch Paul Cromwell's the lifespan of the building, or the elements of the building. Just a wee bit more detail on what the conditions of the actual building are is within that. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Councillor Waters, for your question. So for both facilities, as Stephen's touched on already, Kinross is in slightly worse condition than Crieff. In terms of the frame of the building for Kinross and Crieff, they're in good condition. For Kinross, the vast majority of all other elements, including roof, cladding, and all the mechanical and electrical services, are near the end of their economic life. So that one is more critical. Crieff, not quite so bad, but in the next few years it will be approaching the same condition as Kinross. So both facilities very much need the investment.
Thank you, Provost. Just a wee supplementary. Failure to move forward today with the papers and relating to the crucial refurbishment required, especially in Kinross, creating a delay in this. What's the likely impact for the Lochleven swimming pool going forward? Because according to the papers, we're looking at an overall budget here, and if there's an increase within the budget elsewhere that goes forward, what then becomes impact within these other leisure facilities?
I think given what I said for Kinross in terms of where the plan and the building is in terms of its overall condition, should we not make this investment soon, then we will be looking at probably more failures in plant, which could result in short closures, partial closures, or longer term closures of the facility.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Donaldson next.
Thank you. Just one question I was going to ask about the lifespan of the 2 facilities at Kinross and Crieff if the 13.2 million is not allocated to those facilities. I think I've largely got the answer there. But on the energy consumption, and it may be not so much Stephen Crawford, but Lal can answer. We're talking reducing energy consumption at Kinross by 75% and in Crieff by 80%, and that's very, very substantial. What, all other things being equal, and you'll be using different equipment, what is the potential saving in financial terms?
Potential saving in financial terms across the 2 facilities equates to about £58,000. So that's been based on energy modelling, detailed energy modelling for both facilities.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Collins-Stewart.
Thanks, Provost. A few questions. In terms of the Thimble Row site, whenever I go up to that end of the High Street, South Methven Street area, strikes me that there are very few vacant commercial or retail properties. Has anybody ever done an economic impact assessment on the loss of the car parking at Thimble Row?
The answer is
Thank you for your question, Councillor Stewart. No, not economic assessment has been done for the loss of the car park at Thimble Row, but as previously mentioned, you know, there is plenty car parks for people to use in the city centre. So with the loss of the car parks at Thimble Row, the impact on the economic impact, you know, will be quite little. It will also be that by bringing a leisure centre into the city centre, where it is located at the top of the high street, the footfall at the top of the high street will be increased, which obviously will have some economic benefits to the local shops, but not a specific assessment has been done.
Okay, thanks. And that actually, in terms of increasing the amount of traffic in that area or footfall in that area, that leads me neatly on to my next question, which was, we don't have an air quality assessment or a traffic modelling assessment of moving all of the traffic from Glover Street to the Thimble Row site, do we?
You may remember that the council has adopted a non-statutory guidance on Thimble Row development brief, which obviously highlight a different type of guidance that the detailed planning application will have to you know, come up with, and that's as part of that, you know, as part of that planning application, obviously these assessments will have to be carried out, including air quality, traffic and transport assessment, but that's the normal process in terms of a detailed planning application.
Okay, thanks very much. In terms of the consultation processes which have been followed, have we identified anybody, any bodies or groups, anybody in the public whose money we're proposing to spend, after all, who's actually in favour of the Thimble Row site? I'll take that as a no. Okay, and my last question, I think, is the recommendation regarding the second recommendation, the second bullet point, directing officers to further engage with communities and partners to explore options as regards to the future operating model for the New Bells facility. And given what Mr. Munro said about the two sporting bodies which were mentioned prepared to pay reinstatement costs of the coaching hall floor, would it be possible then to rent the coaching hall out or on a full insuring and repairing lease, as we're doing with Perthshire Rugby Club for a different part of the building? Would that proposal fall under that second bullet point of that recommendation?
I mean, I think there's a range of issues in that. We've effectively, as I said previously, declared the building surplus to requirements in our own portfolio as a vacant space. I could take an action from discussing that with the community sports network on that basis, but to start the discussion.
Thanks very much. That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duff. Next, please.
Thanks, Provost. Yeah, my question. So generally speaking, then, would you say it's cheaper to build a two-storey building than a three-storey building of the same overall capacity?
As a quantity surveyor, the normal metrics would be it's cheaper to build a three-storey building than a two-storey building because of economies of scale.
And in relation to, sorry, second question, in relation to the open air version, if you like, of Bells, we've still talk about the potential flood risk in the area. Would it be your intention, in whatever way we would use bells, to have to raise the floor in there? Or is there a risk in an open air facility that a flood could sweep away, you know, whether the 3G pitch materials or equipment easier than a closed version of bells?
Could I answer one? The proposal was to have a covered bells in the first instance, and secondly, any proposal would look to minimise any risk of flood of flooding in the future.
Further. You have it. Okay. Councillor Robertson next.
Thank you, Provost. One of the deputations said that one of their criticisms was that the site at Thimble Row wasn't really suitable for further expansion with the growing population of Perth, that we couldn't actually increase the size of the asset there when we build it. Could we get guarantees that there is room for further expansion on that site as the population of Perth develops? Thank you.
I don't think I can give guarantees, but we own other land, other car parking space around that area. If push came to shove at a future time. But I think, as said previously, our strategy is to try and endeavour to use our school estate and our existing facilities more and better than we've done through our utilisation in the past.
Okay. And final question, Councillor Welch.
Thank you, Provost. It details, in terms of future provision for bells, I think this is an exciting future for bells, the use of it as an event space. Can you just talk about, you know, what you envisage in that, and maybe what facilities that might be needed to ensure that full potential for that facility? Thank you.
I mean, I'd have to say that it is a concept at the moment. Obviously, I included a number of diagrams and feasibility diagrams last September that talked about concerts, that talked about you know, fairs in that indoor markets, that type of thing. I think it all factors into what exactly is the surface do we have, and I think we do need to have, again, in the paper, I think we need to rethink bells around its role as a public amenity space on the North Inch, what public toilets we have in there, what are the opportunities for the things that you mention, and actually I think the concept and the proposal is actually quite exciting in terms of outside of just a sports centre, what else can we do on that site?
Thank you. It sounds like the wee O2.
Okay. On that light note, I see no further questions. I'm just going to do a quick check. There are no further questions. Wonderful. Right. Okay, we're going to break for half an hour for lunch, and we're going to return at 1:45. Good afternoon, members, and welcome back to the members of the public who are joining us. We now move on to invite the Leader of the Council to move a motion, but before you do, Mr. Leader, I've got a point of clarification from Councillor Stewart. Councillor Stewart.
Thanks very much, Provost. It was just to invite maybe Mr. Crawford to give an up-to-date figure for the Scottish Waterworks at the North Inch.
When initially the Scottish Water investment proposals came forward, there were a range of £5 to £6 million. In the last 6 months, it's been clarified it's probably nearer to £3 million. But the scope has not changed.
Thanks. It was just to make sure that the wrong number wasn't floating out there.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Leader, would you like to move your motion?
Thanks, Provost. Provost, colleagues, today we are being asked to make a decision that will shape the future of leisure, well-being and the community life across Perth and Kinross for decades to come. The proposals before us are not just about a new swimming pool or a single site. They represent a joined-up investment plan, one that delivers for both our city and our towns. In return for the £97 million of investment, we will be able to provide our residents with a new PH2O facility at Thimble Row with flumes and enhanced leisure water, a direct response to what our communities and members within this chamber have asked for. A sustainable future for Bell Sports Centre, transforming it into a covered sports and events space that retains its iconic presence on the North Inch. Also, major upgrades to the pools in Kinross and Crieff, extending their life and cutting energy use by up to 80%. And also, and importantly, a new opportunity for Capability Scotland to remain in Perth, securing vital services and over 200 jobs in the heart of our city. Officers have taken the challenge of how to make replacement leisure facilities for Perth affordable, and have gone over and above that to bring us a proposal which allows us to spread the benefits of that investment across the whole region, delivering also for the people of Perth, not just the people of Perth and Kinross, but Kinross itself and Crieff, by allocating funding so that work can progress in their areas to protect local swimming. This is also in addition to the £36 million that has been invested for the new Blairgowrie Recreation Centre and the £8.7 million investment in Pitlochry, which were both previously agreed by Council. Together, these projects represent £142 million of commitment to leisure and wellbeing across Perth and Kinross by this administration, but by all of us in this chamber. A scale of investment that is both ambitious and recognises the benefits of looking beyond the city centre. We know how important these facilities are to people's health, well-being and sense of community. That's why we've taken a joined-up approach, one that delivers real value for money and long-term benefits for residents across the area. It's an opportunity that we can't afford to miss, because let's be clear, as has been demonstrated time and time again, delays cost money. Every month we wait, construction costs rise. Every month we delay, our existing buildings continue to age. That increases the risk of failure and puts more pressure on already stretched budgets. We've already seen this with PH2O. The cost of the base case has risen by £5 million since September due to inflation and market pressures. If we don't act now, we risk the cost going up even more. And more importantly, we risk letting down the communities who are counting on us to deliver. That's why I'm asking you to support the recommendations in this report, because they're not just affordable, they're deliverable. Because they don't just respond to what we've heard, they reflect what we've learned. And because they don't just meet the needs of today, they lay the foundations for the future. Take Capability Scotland. Their current site up for Springland is no longer fit for purpose. The risks are real and the options are limited. By supporting their move to Glover Street, we're not just offering a new location, we're helping people stay connected to the community they know and trust. We're protecting continuity of care, retaining over 200 jobs, and bringing new external capital investment and footfall into the city centre. This is what smart, strategic investment looks like. It's about having a business brain and a social heart. I borrowed that phrase from our Deputy Chief Executive. So let's not lose momentum. Let's not let a wish to return to the past get in the way of the future. Let's move forward with confidence, with clarity, and with a shared commitment to making Perth and Kinross a place where everyone can live life well. I'm very happy and proud to move this report. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Mr. Deputy Leader to second.
Provost, councillors, I'm very pleased to second today's motion, not just because it delivers on the asks of Council to date, not just because it brings an enhanced leisure water offer that our residents have asked for, and not just because it will help reinvigorate the city centre and support businesses who have been increasingly under pressure with changing shopping habits. Although given the events of last weekend, that support is required more than ever before. But the real reason I am seconding this motion is that it sums up everything that this council is trying to do. It represents investment in new facilities to support sport and leisure, building, as Councillor Lang has already pointed out, on the investments already made in Blairgowrie and Pitlochry. It looks beyond the needs of the city centre and recognises the importance of our large towns as hubs to cater for the sport and leisure needs of the surrounding villages. It creates opportunities for further business growth by providing another reason to visit the city centre, and it does it all in a way that is financially sustainable. And if that wasn't enough, what we also have before us today is the confirmation that the decision we made in September to build PH2O at Thimble Row and free up land at Glover Street is the right one. We have an important opportunity today, an opportunity to ensure that our residents who need additional support can continue to receive that in the city that is their home, that 230 jobs providing support to residential and daycare clients will remain in Perth, that we can continue to show that we are a city and a council who care about the most vulnerable in our communities. As many will know, I have been a regular visitor to Upper Springland over the years, and I know at first hand what an amazing service they provide and how important it is to the people they support. Because of circumstances beyond their control, Capability Scotland are looking for a new location, and Glover Street just provides an amazing opportunity to achieve that in a way which helps to create further links between the residents and the local community. In an easily accessible location where residents can enjoy the benefit from the close location to shops, green spaces and other facilities in the city. And we've heard clearly today from Callum McGregor from Capability Scotland both the challenges of the Upper Springland site and the significant benefits and opportunities of relocation to the Glover Street site. To conclude, this council unanimously approved its priorities early during this administration. These include supporting and promoting physical and mental well-being, tech, protecting and caring for vulnerable people, tech. To be clear, this council, which represents the public, agreed Thimble Row last year. At that time, public opinion mainly focused on the lack of leisure water. Council has listened and officers have delivered much improved family-friendly leisure water with exciting flumes for the enjoyment of children of all ages. Indeed, earlier today, Mr. Cromwell expressed his own excitement at what we will be able to offer in Thimble Row PH2O. This package of proposals absolutely delivers for the people across all of Perth and Kinross, not just Perth. And it does so within financial parameters that are affordable, thanks to the Council's own, again, unanimously approved policy for funding capital expenditure via a ring-fence 1.25% of council tax, together with its well-earned reputation for prudent financial management. To exceed what we can afford would be reckless in the extreme, and I therefore commend officers for their diligence and professionalism in devising today's carefully considered proposals. Very happy to second.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Leader. I'm now going to ask if there are any amendments
Progress there is, we're just trying to get it to officers.
Okay. I've got amendment from Bailey.
Thank you, Provost. I'm happy today to support option 2 with regard to swimming, but with a small amendment. My amendment makes one pragmatic enhancement to the pool, but I'll come to that in a moment. First of all, I want to address the loss of Thimble Road, the loss of Bells as an indoor facility, and to some extent Dewars. I've heard all the very strong arguments against those moves today, and thank all the petitioners and deputies for bringing those forward. However, we must recognise that those significant shifts in council position were put to an electoral test in September of last year. If the people of Perth and Kinross were really truly concerned by those changes, then the by-elections later that month gave 20,000 of them the chance to make their feelings heard. We therefore have to take something from the fact that voters returned one additional SNP and one additional Lib Dem councillor to this chamber. So I'll be supporting option 2 on swimming today. It's the best leisure facility that we're going to get this decade, and is second only to the original proposals, which I did a very good job of dying on a ditch in support of in March 2023. However, what we do build has to be useful now and in future. We have only one chance to get it right. Therefore, I move that we make a slight upgrade to allow the water in each of the respective areas to be heated according to their usage. As we've heard before, leisure swimmers want their water slightly warmer than those who are swimming for exercise. This change will also give redundancy in case of equipment breakdown or pool water contamination. It's better, after all, to design it in now than to wish that we'd done it in years to come. And also, when refurbishment time comes around, the councillors sitting in our seats later this century will thank us for the redundancy too. I wish, therefore, to move the amendment per the screens, and I'm hopeful that the administration and others will be open to incorporating it into their motion. Thank you very much, Provost.
Thank you, Bailey. And I'm happy to formally second that. I don't have the other amendment, but I have indication that we have another amendment. It's Mr. Leader, you want to come in?
Having had sight of this from Bailey before, and having discussed it with the relevant officer and with my seconder, I'm happy to incorporate the amendment into our motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Drysdale. Are you happy with?
Yes, indeed, Provost.
Thank you, and I'm just going to take some quick advice from officers on what's coming next. There has been a request for a couple of minutes patience for officers to check the amendment, which they're doing as we speak. So we will just take 2 minutes. Point of clarification from the Leader of the Council.
Yeah, I thought in standing orders that amendments would be preferred to be in or asked for to be scrutinised by officers the day before. We're now, we've had 3/4 of an hour since we went out to break. An amendment should surely have been prepared, and why are we having another recess to bring forward an amendment? I don't understand that.
The scheme, the standing order is advisory, and obviously we would like people to bring them in advance, and indeed as soon as they possibly have them. It is, however, advisory. However, it is not particularly courteous to other members to be bringing it at such a late stage. However, given the importance of the topic, I am going to allow officers to assist in ensuring that it is competent. So we're going to take a couple of minutes. Claire has Bailey McLaren has a future life as a performer, I'm sure, for those of us that managed to see her slide across the floor there. Thank you for your patience, members. As I said before the start of the 2-minute recess about 20 minutes ago, obviously we would normally prefer amendments in advance because this does allow officers to consider the implications of the amendments. However, standing order is advisory, and therefore that has required and necessitated that officers have an ability to check to provide me with the advice before I rule on competency. I am told it is indeed technically competent, and therefore I'm going to accept it. I'm now going to invite Councillor Duff to move his amendment.
Thank you, Provost. Can I just start by apologising to members for the short further delay in bringing forward our amendment this afternoon. I'd like to start by thanking the 3 individuals who provided deputations earlier. I believe that their inputs highlighted the immense dissatisfaction and frustration that exists within the populace towards the recommendations being put forward by the administration today. We've all seen the concerns in the correspondence, social media posts, phone calls, emails, discussions, newspaper articles of the last few months. In all my time as a councillor, I don't think I've ever had so many concerned approaches on a council matter than this one. And having read hundreds of social media posts, I've yet to read one in favour of the administration's proposals around PH2O and Bell Sports Centre. There can be no doubt that the considered view is that these proposals lack the vision and ambition needed for the city of Perth. A city where the Perth Leisure Pool, Dewar Centre and Bell Sports Centre were seen as iconic sport and leisure attractions and well worthy of a visit from far and wide. The initial concept of PH2O was a worthy replacement for these 3 sporting facilities. Nobody doubted that it would be expensive, but it would cement Perth as a thriving, vibrant city destination at the heart of Scotland within 90 minutes reach of 90% of the population. The current concept being presented today is, I think, unlikely to entice the level of visitors from across Perth and Kinross and beyond, which our former facilities do. When Olympia had to close because of problems with the roof, families and visitors from Dundee and Angus came to Perth, and our visitor numbers increased significantly as a result. If we replace Perth Leisure Pool with a leisure water which is just over 1/3 of the size, I fear Perth will lose out to Dundee and Stirling and Dunfermline. In our amendment, we propose reverting to Glover Street as the best site option for PH2O. It does not have the significant constraints of Thimble Row, which will restrict sports development in the future at a time when we are looking to expand the city by a further 7,500 homes. The Dewar Centre, with its ice rink and very popular new gym, has never been busier, and its operating deficit has been significantly reduced as a result. It also has the advantage of leaving the Dewar Centre in play for any future opportunity and being more strategically located to take advantage of the proposed bus and rail link. Building new, more ambitious and more exciting facilities in Glover Street will deliver a better sports and leisure legacy for our city. Our proposal is to commit to include more leisure water in a bigger and better PH2O facility, providing the facilities mix in the paper, but providing a significantly bigger leisure water offer. In relation to the consultation on Bells, which received 1,981 responses, we have heard various views on the value of the exercise regarding its future use. 80% of responders agreed that Bells was very important to them, and over 60%, about 1,200 responders, were prepared to support the one and only suggested option of an open-air, unheated sports and events space. On the other hand, The Perth and Kinross Community Sports Network petition identified over 3,800 individuals who felt that the sports centre should be retained as a heated indoor multi-use sports and event space. An initial business case has been undertaken by the Sports Network, which shows the potential for a refurbished and reinstated Belt Sports Centre to have a far better operating cost position. No such business case has been completed for the administration's unheated open-air version, and we therefore recommend that a full business case for both options are completed and that officers, together with the sports community representative and partners, explore the best operating model for a future Bell Sports Centre facility and report back to a future meeting of this council. Whatever the outcome of this, there is a need to deal with the rack and asbestos within the building, and we therefore recommend the allocation of £1 million needed to tackle this. We also support the proposed investment in the refurbishment of the fabric and energy efficiency of the swimming pools and leisure centres in Kinross and Crieff. They're happy to support the allocation of £13.2 million of capital investment required. Finally, I come to the more recent addition of Capability Scotland into the equation. Members have only had a short period of time to consider the implications of this recommendation. I'm aware of the situation which Capability Scotland finds itself in relation to its site at Upper Springland. As a council, we welcome Capability Scotland's commitment to remaining in Perth and will work with them to identify a suitable alternative site a suitable alternative site in Perth. Provost, this is a very complex situation. This is a very complex situation, but an important one for Perth. I believe our amendment proposes the right way forward for the city and for Perth and Kinross. Perth needs a more ambitious and more exciting sport and leisure offer than is proposed in the motion. That comes with a bigger price tag, but it is worth a cost worth paying. I commend our amendment to the Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Bailey Ahern, even to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. I'm happy to second our Conservative amendment. We are an expanding city with visions about how the city will look in the future. We have a vision for a new transport hub. We have visions for businesses. We're building sector-leading schools, and we built a successful museum. However, when it comes to leisure, this administration's closed its eyes and we're blind to what could be possible. We've had deputations today giving an alternative to leisure in the city centre instead of building a rec centre on a car park. I've had no one contact me or speak to me agreeing with the plans to build on the Thimble Road car park or the plans for Bells. On the contrary, I've had nothing but emails, letters, conversations against the proposals. And earlier, we didn't hear that anyone else in the chamber had heard anything different. This administration and anyone who supports this motion are obviously not listening to the residents of Perth and Kinross. Maybe they don't care, or they don't plan to be around to get the complaints when you can't get parked for a swim, or you can't get parked when you get home from work, or that you can't take your young family for a swim because it's just too far from public transport or parking. The idea that you can park in Canal Street car park and walk with bags and several small children in whatever the weather might be for a swim in a pool with some floats and minimal leisure water is incredible and not viable. Parking in car parks nearby, as we heard, is an option will be a massive problem for residents and raise tensions for them on top of other issues that they already have to put up with in the city centre. We have a car park that's well used by shoppers, hotel guests and residents, but this administration thinks it's okay to take away the Thimble Road car park. We're moving facilities further away from transport hubs. The plans for the Perth Transport Hub included a footbridge from the station to the PH2O, making it directly accessible for people living further afield. Well, that won't be required anymore. Unbelievably, we also hear that no economic impact assessment on businesses has been undertaken in an area with very little vacant properties and thriving businesses, potentially changing this area for the foreseeable future. It's only 3/4 of an hour to Dundee's Olympia with excellent leisure water, or you could use any of the other pools in towns around Perth and Kinross. That'll be no different in coming to Perth for much of the same. We have new housing developments being built surrounding Perth, bringing in thousands of new residents. yet we're reducing the leisure provision. Bell Sports Centre, absolutely no thoughts have gone into this building. Unheated multi-use pitches, what a future for an iconic building. I still question whether the building will be safe when unheated and open to the elements. This is a building that could be so much more, as we again have heard from deputations that at least have a vision for our future. We have in the past looked at sports in this city, and the Thimble Row site has had many ideas for alternative use. I asked years ago for a bowling alley, only to be told that it's not a sport that's on the increase. Funny that, Dundee have built two since I first mentioned it. What we have now is more of the same. It'll be too late to learn lessons once this has been built. The plans before us do not include the Dewars Centre for whatever reason. However, these plans have a massive impact on Dewars. Probably more bad news to come in the future. We currently have a gym in Dewars that can hold 140 people and is always full. But with these plans, that cannot stay and must move to the new rec centre on the car park. We have some of the best ice in the country for curling and space that can be used for indoor bowls and exhibitions, etc. But so much more could be done with that building. If this motion is put forward today, then that will be the death knell for Dewars, and maybe that is the plan. The Glover Street site could be an imaginative sports campus with fantastic facilities, but not with these plans. You've heard today from people that have visions on what could be done. The decisions you make today will change Perth, and not for the good. I do support the plans for Kinross and Crieff, and if the plans for Perth get the go-ahead, then you will need these centres because there'll be nothing in Perth to come to. I really hope that you back the amendment and do what the residents of Perth and Kinross are asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey Ahern. I have 2 points of clarification. The first one is from the Leader of the Council, and then the second one is from Councillor Duff. Leader of the Council first.
Yes, Provost, unlike other members, I don't suffer from amnesia of what happened over the last 5 years or didn't happen. So I've seen this has been cobbled together, and I don't think officers have had the right time to review it. Can I ask officers to give their view of the implications of this Conservative amendment, and with again kicking this down the line as they did in the full 5 years when they were in administration and gave no thought to sport and leisure, and that we bring forward. So can we please get the implications from the officers of following this amendment, which is obviously very difficult to get through and was cobbled together at last minute?
Okay, since we're ahead of debate, I am going to allow officers to provide some clarity on the implications to inform debate. However, I think it has to be very tight around what is actually in the amendment, and in that framework. Chief Executive, if you want to come in.
Thank you, Provost. As Council has noted, there has been a very short period for officers to respond to what has been presented just recently. We have had a very quick look at this, so this comes with a health warning. But taking each of the elements of the amendment, at 2.1, as officers read it, there is an additional £11 million being introduced in terms of the cost, moving from the 74 million recommendation by officers to 85 million. This would introduce in the region of an additional £700,000 per annum in borrowing, so a revenue implication for the council. It doesn't at this point, given the changes and the doubling of the leisure water, it doesn't allow us to look at the further revenue implications that would be introduced by the expanded specification. So at present, we are seeing the revenue implications rise from 1.3, the recommended option in front of you just now, to 2 million, but that does not include a calculation of further revenue costs for the running of the new facility. 2 other points on 2.1. At this point, we can't confirm whether or not the existing design would be something that we would be able to work from, or whether there would need to be a whole new design undertaken for this doubling of leisure water. And that will introduce potentially significant delay to the process in terms of new design and potentially additional costs. And the last point that was made, I think, in the questions to officers previously, was that we cannot confirm that the development at Glover Street would allow PLP to remain open throughout that process, so there would be a risk of a period of closure. In terms of 2.2, the view from officers is, and again, I think it's important to clarify, because it's been a comment that's been made at least 2 or 3 times this morning. Officers were not asked to do an updated business case. I've just got 2 more points. So that's why there hasn't been an updated business case presented to council. Officers were asked to undertake an engagement. We have done that subject to a decision today. It was always the intention to develop a business case on the recommendation from officers. But accepting that, a delay and costs exercise would need to be undertaken based on the business case we have received from the Sports Network, and an early calculation of that cost. We estimated the capital cost to be around £29 million, and that will introduce a further £1.1 million annual revenue pressure into the council's budgets. Finally, on 2.5, I have no comments on 2.3 or on 2.4, but on 2.5 of the amendment, officers' understanding is that Capability have carried out an assessment of alternative sites in and around the Perth area, and to date have not identified a site that would be suitable, hence why they are very committed to the option to develop on Glover Street. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you. Right, I have a point of clarification next from Councillor Duff, and then I have a point of order from Councillor Colin Stewart. So Councillor Duff next, please.
It was just to say, in relation to Councillor Bailey's amendment, I'd be happy to incorporate that into our amendment. Hopefully Bailey Ahern will agree.
Bailey Ahern, you have to.
Yes, I will agree.
So the amendment is incorporated into the motion, but what I assume you are wishing to say is that you're happy to agree that the same terms of that would be included in yours, and that you'll put that in when you sum up. Is that correct? Right, thank you. Okay. Councillor Colin Stewart next, please. You have a point of order.
Thanks, Provost. There are variations on each of the suggestions, I think, with the exception of 2.4 between the amendment and the motion. They are largely distinct, and I wondered therefore whether, in terms of Standing Order 21.7, I think it is, members could vote on the items separately when it comes to it.
Okay, and do you have a seconder for that proposal?
I'd be happy to second that, Provost.
Okay, thank you. 2 seconds. No, I'm going to decide. Yes, I'm content that they are. The recommendations are distinct enough, and indeed both the motion and the amendment propose significantly different enough options in a number of areas that we will split up them into. I think there's probably actually only 3 that are distinct differences, but I will confirm that with committee, who will be able to consider the matter whilst debate is ongoing, and we will confirm that before there is any vote. But yes, I am happy to go along with that. Councillor Donaldson.
Provost, just to ask and to clarify, I presume from what you've been saying that you deem this amendment to be competent, although some of us would see it as being an incompetent, competent amendment. but technically you see it as competent.
Thank you. Yes, I have considered the terms. I have had a discussion with officers, and whilst obviously they didn't have a long time to consider the matter, they have considered it and given me an opinion on it. Their advice was that it is indeed technically competent. I have read it and I concur with that position. This is obviously, the council has broad powers to change its policy as it sees fit, and this is out with the 6-month mark. So in my opinion, it is competent. Whether you or others may agree with the terms of it is another matter, obviously, but I am accepting it as technically competent, yes.
Okay, and one respect your ruling. Right, okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're now going to move on to Councillor Tom McEwen, and then, sorry, Councillor Lane, you've got first point of order.
So if you're going to vote on everything independently and the votes were to split up, there's no financial envelope. The envelope could be exploded depending on what you vote for at each one. These have to be taken together to give a sensible financial solution. You could be looking at double the envelope if everybody gets what the votes split one way and then the other way, because we would all love to have the all singing, dance and stuff across there, but if we vote for it, we'll never deliver it. It has to be taken in one.
No, so I disagree with that, Mr. Leader, because for the example, if the terms of the amendment are accepted in full, as would be the case if the amendment were to win, the implications are the same regardless. There isn't a difference in that. If you were to accept the proposal of the amendment, if it was to get voted through.
So why can't it all be done at once?
Because there has been a request in line with the standing order to vote on the different component parts. It is quite a wide-ranging paper. It does cover a number of topics, and the recommendations are split into different parts. So we're not going to split up recommendations. The recommendations will be put one against the other, but actually they are on quite significantly different topics. One is on the swimming pool at Thimble Row, or indeed in this case versus the proposal in the amendment. One is on bells, which is another facility, obviously. And 2.3 and 2.4, I have read them, and although there is a minor word difference, I consider them to be the same. And 2.5, they are distinctly different.
Provost, to continue, can we ask for a recess for this, because I do not agree with it. I'll accept your ruling, but I do not find it that I can make much sense of it. I need it explained to me.
Okay, I'm gonna come to Councillor McEwen first, and then we'll have a minute for me to have a conversation with you about it. I'm not changing my ruling. Councillor McEwen.
Well, I think it's disappointing that you're sitting there already without conversation saying you're not going to change your ruling, but that wasn't what I was going to say. What I'm going to say is I don't think you're truly taking into account how complex this is going to be, trying to get to vote on this. You know, councillors in this chamber have taken this whole paper over the years, some of us more years than others. We have some new councillors in this chamber who haven't been through this process at all. And you're going to chop this up into little bits without any forward explanation of what they're actually voting for. And all you're going to do is create a confusing vote. And I don't think you're taking members' ability to follow was that 100 words, 150 word amendment that they've never seen before, seen in half an hour. You want us to digest all that, split it all up into bits, see how it balances out with the motion, and vote on it independently and do that competently. I'm sorry, I do not agree. And if you take it forward that way, I want my objection to you doing this registered in the minutes of the meeting.
I've got Councillor Liz Barrett first, and then I'm coming to Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Provost. My concern is that 2.1 and 2.5 are intrinsically very, very connected, because if you vote one way on 2.1, the 2.5 proposal doesn't work. So I think you have to take them, you absolutely have to take them together. as a minimum. And I also agree with all the objections about doing it this way anyway, to be perfectly honest. So I would like my objection to that minuted too. Thank you.
As I said, officers will decide what actually goes together and they will be voted on in that basis. So that will be worked out, and we will tell council, we will obviously advise councillors what they're voting on before they're doing it. But this provision does exist in the standing order. We have used it before. We routinely use it for things like the LDP. There is a lot of different parts of this paper, and it seems fair to allow this use of the standing order. However, I'm quite happy to come offline and have that discussion with the members who are concerned about it. Councillor Welch, you also have a point of order.
Yeah,
Sorry, Councillor Donaldson and then Councillor Welch. I would say also members are supposed to be telling me what point of order that they are referencing here.
No, Provost, when I spoke a few minutes ago, I was referring to the competency of the amendment, the totality of the amendment which we've only just seen a few minutes ago. That really is not at all satisfactory on such a major issue as this. But it almost now seems to, and I think we've got to discuss this in a recess, it's not just one amendment, it's almost kind of exploded into 4, possibly 5 amendments that we've got here. And I just think that is, and they all interrelate with one another. I just don't think that that's feasible. It's got to be the total amendment or, yeah. Okay.
So first of all, I think at most, as I've already set out, that there is maybe maximum of 3 separate issues here. 2 of them are already the same between the motion and the amendment, and therefore there is no difference. I absolutely agree that with Councillor Barrett's point that actually points 1 and 5 are linked, and therefore I would imagine they will be put together, but I am going to take advice on that, and therefore there would be 2 votes. So I do not think this is going to explode into lots of votes. I think it is a vote probably on the Bell's recommendation, which is not interdependent with the vote on Thimble Row. The financial implications are the same regardless whether the whole amendment is voted through or whether, if the whole amendment is voted through, right, we are going to have a recess. Right, good afternoon again, councillors, and thank you for your forbearance throughout this afternoon. We are now going to come to, I'll come to you just in a second. Let me get my explanation out, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Lane. 2.1, which is Thimble Row versus the amendment proposal of Glover Street, along with 2.4, where there is no difference between the motion and the amendment, and 2.5, which is about the use of Capability Scotland on the Glover Street site, which are linked obviously with 2.1, will be voted as one proposal. They are all linked and they will vote together. So that is Thimble Row versus Glover Street, effectively. Okay. The second vote will be on 2.2 and 2.3, which is the Bells vote, basically. So for simplicity, it's Thimble Row versus Glover Street, and then it's Bells. There is only 2 votes, and those are the 2 votes. We will reiterate all of this before there is any voting as well, to make sure that everyone is clear what they're voting on. Okay, I have a point of order from the Leader of the Council.
Thanks, Provost. Can I invoke Standing Order 17.1 that we have a vote on moving straight to the vote with no further debate, please?
Do you have a seconder?
Very happy to second, Provost.
Okay, we have a seconder from the Leader of the Council. This requires a vote to confirm whether members are content to do that. I'll ask the clerk to move straight to a vote on that matter.
Thank you, Provost. If I can therefore ask members to confirm if they're voting for or against the moving straight to the vote. So if members can say the words for or against the proposal by Councillor Lane. Bailey Ahern.
Against.
Councillor Allen.
Against.
Councillor Anderson,
Against.
Bailey,
Against.
Councillor Liz Barrett,
For.
Councillor Peter Barrett,
Against.
Councillor Braun,
Against.
Bailey Brock,
For.
Councillor Carr,
For.
Councillor Chan,
Against.
Councillor Cuthbert,
For.
Councillor Donaldson,
For.
Councillor Drysdale,
For.
Councillor Duff,
Against.
Councillor Forbes,
Against.
Councillor Frampton,
For.
Councillor Freshwater,
Against.
Councillor Harvey,
For.
Councillor Illingworth,
Against.
Councillor James,
Against.
Councillor Tregali,
Against.
Councillor Lane,
For.
Councillor McPherson,
For.
Councillor Mayer,
For.
Councillor Massey,
For.
Councillor McCole,
For.
Provost,
As abstain as chair in line with my previous position on the matter.
Councillor McEwen,
For.
Bailey McLaren,
For.
Deputy Provost,
For.
Councillor Rebeck,
For.
Councillor Robertson,
For.
Councillor Shires,
Against.
Councillor Colin Stewart,
Against.
Councillor Grant Stewart,
For.
Councillor Watt,
For.
Councillor Waters,
For.
Councillor Welsh,
For.
and Bailey Williamson.
For.
Provost 23 have voted for the proposal and 15 against with one abstention. So the procedural motion by Councillor Lang is carried.
Okay, thank you. Right, councillors, we then I have a point of order from Councillor McEwen next.
I'm very sorry, Provost. I know you want to go on with this. During the voting there, I heard comments from members while people were voting, and I thought that was against standing orders to do that, and that the chamber should remain silent while members are voting.
Obviously, members should be respectful of other members at all times. There is not, to my knowledge, a specific standing order that requires that they be silent during voting, but obviously they should be respectful. And I would remind members to be respectful of others when voting is taking place. Okay, we will now move on to the votes. The clerk will confirm in advance what is being voted on. If anyone has any questions, please indicate before we start voting, because we cannot stop voting mid-voting. So if you are unsure, please let us know in advance of starting to vote. I have a point of clarification from Councillor Duff. No, there is not summing up, Councillor Barrett, because we've moved straight to a vote and there's been a procedural motion on that. Councillor Duff.
And that was my question. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Mr. Hendry, it is now for your part of for the day. If I can hand over to you.
Thank you, Provost. Members, we're dealing with item 6 on the agenda, the Perth City Integrated Investment and Leisure Assets Review Update, report by Strategic Lead Property Services. We had a motion by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Drysdale, to agree the recommendations within the report. There was an amendment by Bailey, seconded by Provost McDade, the terms of which were circulated to you. That amendment was subsequently incorporated into the motion by Councillors Lang and Drysdale. We then had an amendment by Councillor Duff, seconded by Bailey Ahern, again the terms of which were circulated to you. So we had a substantive motion by Councillor Lang and an amendment by Councillor Duff. As the Provost already indicated in terms of standing orders, we will be having a first vote purely on sections 2.1
2.4 and 2.5 of both the motion and the amendment, and there will then be a second vote in relation to sections 2.2 and 2.3 of both the motion and an amendment. Are there any queries from members before we begin the first vote? Okay, so in terms of the first vote, which again is in relation to sections 2.1, 2.4 and 2.5, can I ask members to indicate if they're voting for the motion or the amendment? Bailey Ahern.
Amendment.
Councillor Allen.
Amendment.
Councillor Anderson.
Amendment.
Bailey.
Motion.
Councillor Liz Barrett.
Motion.
Councillor Peter Barrett.
Motion.
Councillor Braun.
Amendment.
Bailey Brock.
Motion.
Councillor Carr.
Motion.
Councillor Chan.
Amendment.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Amendment.
Councillor Donaldson.
Motion.
Councillor Drysdale.
Motion.
Councillor Duff.
Amendment.
Councillor Forbes.
Amendment.
Councillor Frampton.
Motion.
Councillor Freshwater.
Amendment.
Councillor Harvey.
Motion.
Councillor Illingworth.
Amendment.
Councillor James.
Amendment.
Councillor Kogali.
Amendment.
Councillor Lang.
Motion.
Councillor McPherson.
Motion.
Councillor Mayer.
Motion.
Councillor Massey.
Motion.
Councillor McCall.
Motion.
Provost.
Motion.
Councillor McEwen.
Motion.
Bailey McLaren.
Motion.
Deputy Provost.
Motion.
Councillor Rebeck.
Motion.
Councillor Robertson.
Amendment.
Councillor Shires.
Amendment.
Councillor Colin Stewart.
Amendment.
Councillor Grant Stewart.
Motion.
Councillor Watt.
Motion.
Councillor Waters.
Motion.
Councillor Welsh.
Motion.
And Bailey Williamson.
Motion.
Provost, we have 24 votes for the motion, 15 votes for the amendment, so the motion is therefore carried. Can I now ask members to indicate in the second vote if they're voting for the motion or the amendment? And a reminder, this is in relation to sections 2.2 and 2.3. Bailey Ahern.
Amendment.
Councillor Allen.
Amendment.
Councillor Anderson.
Amendment.
Bailey.
Amendment.
Councillor Liz Barrett.
Motion.
Councillor Peter Barrett.
Motion.
Councillor Braun.
Amendment.
Bailey Brock.
Motion.
Councillor Carr.
Motion.
Councillor Chan.
Amendment.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Amendment.
Councillor Donaldson.
Motion.
Councillor Drysdale.
Motion.
Councillor Duff.
Amendment.
Councillor Forbes.
Amendment.
Councillor Frampton.
Motion.
Councillor Freshwater.
Amendment.
Councillor Harvey.
Motion.
Councillor Illingworth.
Amendment.
Councillor James.
Amendment.
Councillor Kogali.
Amendment.
Councillor Lang.
Motion.
Councillor McPherson.
Motion.
Councillor Mayer.
Motion.
Councillor Massey.
Motion.
Councillor McCall.
Motion.
Provost.
Motion.
Councillor McEwen.
Motion.
Bailey McLaren.
Motion.
Deputy Provost.
Motion.
Councillor Rebeck.
Motion.
Councillor Robertson.
Amendment.
Councillor Shires.
Amendment.
Councillor Colin Stewart.
Amendment. Sorry. Motion.
I will accept your vote for the motion. Councillor Grant Stewart.
Motion.
Councillor Watt.
Motion.
Sorry, Councillor Watt.
Motion.
You. Councillor Waters.
Motion.
Councillor Welsh.
Motion.
And Bailey Williamson.
Motion.
Provost, we have 24 votes for the motion, 15 for the amendment, so the motion is carried.
Okay, thank you very much, members. That finishes item 6, which obviously we started at 11 o'clock this morning, I think.
Provost, can I record my dissent as I have done in the chat, please?
You can indeed. Yes, anyone who wishes to record the dissent may record it in the chat, and it will be recorded in the minutes officially. Okay, we are now, before we move on, however, I would like to thank those who have joined us today, including Mr McGregor of Capability Scotland, Mr Cromwell of LAL, Mr Atkinson of Integra, and of course the deputies, Mr Munro, Mr Bryan, Mr Wilson, Mr Fitchett and Mr Powrie for coming along and taking part in the democratic process. It is appreciated. I appreciate the vote may not have gone the way you wished, but actually it's very important that you have been heard today, so thank you for coming along as well. We now move on to item 7, which is the updates to the scheme of administration. They have been included in the supplementary agenda pack, which you have. These are some minor tweaks to the Provost Subcommittee, which is to be renamed Civic Affairs Subcommittee, to show that it is now a much wider group of councillors that take part in overseeing civic process, including the Baileys, and also incorporates matters which were previously not remitted, such as the Society of High Constables of Perth Constitution oversight and the relationship with the Lieutenancy of Perth and Kinross. Are we happy to agree the changes to the scheme of administration? Thank you. Members, item 8 is the elect a member briefing notes since the 7th of May 2025. Are members happy to note the elect member briefing notes? Good, thank you. Members, just before we finish, I would like to advise Council of the sad passing of former Provost Jean McCormack this morning. She was the first woman Provost of Perth and Kinross and served from 1992 to 1996. And was a huge supporter of the Twinnings and of the Peace Child project. She will obviously be sadly missed by all those who knew her, and we send our condolences to her family and friends. And of course, in line with council policy, we will be lowering the flags to half-mast today as a mark of respect. Thank you very much, members. That concludes today's business. Have a safe journey home.